Chapter 38-52. She said that it was her first time eating Western food with a guy and not a celebrity. She actually treated him as an ordinary guy. When Hua Jin heard this, he couldn't help but feel relieved. It had been a long time since he felt so relaxed. After debuting for so long, it seemed that very few people looked at him as an ordinary guy. He didn't have to act like an idol anymore. Hua Jin leaned lazily against the back of the chair and crossed his arms. He was a little puzzled. Have you dated before? What? Have you dated a guy before? When Liang Yin heard this, she said, No, I've never had a boyfriend before. Then, just treat this as your first date. Liang Yin teased, You're not my boyfriend. Besides, eating with a girl doesn't count as a date, right? Hua Jin snorted haughtily and pressed the dinner bell. Ding! Ding! The desserts were served one after another. 2 corn stews, coupled with crispy bread and toast, were rich and delicious. Liang Yin had been observing Hua Jin. She had never eaten high-class Western food before, so she was at a loss for what to do with the dessert. Hua Jin understood her predicament. Hence, he took a piece of toast with his bare hands and dipped it in the corn stew. When Liang Yin saw this, she immediately followed suit and dipped the toast in the corn stew. The originally crispy toast was immediately softened by the stew and the rich fragrance filled her mouth. Wow! Liang Yin's face was full of satisfaction. Delicious. Delicious food could really bring happiness. Just a piece of French toast was enough to sweep away all of Liang Yin's gloominess on the set. All of her disappointment and sadness were swept away. Hua Jin was a little dumbfounded. It was just a piece of toast. Was there a need to be so exaggerated? The waitress quickly brought over the thin crispy pizza. Hua Jin cut a slice for her and Liang Yin took a bite. Seeing that expression of enjoyment, Hua Jin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It turned out that sometimes, happiness was such a simple thing. Even if it was just a bowl of corn soup. Liang Yin said enviously, You can eat such delicious food every day. I'm jealous. Hua Jin looked at her and said meaningfully, I envy you. You can be so happy because of a bowl of corn soup. Liang Yin froze for a moment. She understood the hidden meaning in Hua Jin's words. She lowered her head and looked at the corn soup beside her. She sighed and said, Because I've never eaten anything so delicious. Really? It's because you haven't had it before that you cherish it and feel happy. It's precisely because you can't obtain something with your own ability that it's so precious. Liang Yin continued, When I was young, I was especially envious of a neighbor's child. Her parents were divorced, and no one took care of her since she was young. She was alone and could play as long as she wanted, even until the sky turned dark. She had never been criticized for not doing her homework or failing her exams. But later, when it was my turn, I began to envy the other students in the class. They had a father and a mother. When they returned home, the family of 3 was really very warm. As Liang Yin spoke, she sighed. Chapter 38-53. Hua Jin was a little surprised. I didn't expect you to say something so profound. I've always thought that you were a simple-minded person. Liang Yin looked at him exasperatedly but didn't say anything. The steak was served. It was medium-well sirloin steak and there were some traces of blood. Liang Yin looked at the traces of blood and asked, How well done is this? It's medium well. Isn't it too rare? No, the meat of a well-done steak is very tender. With that, Hua Jin took the steak from her hand and handed it to her. Liang Yin thought that he had snatched her steak away and glared at him resentfully. She looked as though she wanted to say something. Hua Jin glanced at her and cut the steak bit by bit into the shape of ribs. He knew very well which part of the steak was harder to chew, so he cut this part into cubes. After he had cut the steak into small pieces, he handed it back to her. When Liang Yin saw this, she was a little surprised by his gentlemanly side. So the reason why he had brought the steak over without a word was so that he could cut it into small pieces for her? Liang Yin was a little flattered. Why did she have an inexplicable feeling? Now that the two of them were sitting in a Western restaurant, they actually looked like a couple on a date. Hua Jin looked at her meaningfully. How would he know what she was thinking? He saw that she had her head lowered and was staring at the steak nervously. Her face was a little red. Hence, he thought that the heater in the room was too high and walked over to lower the temperature. When he returned to his seat, he said something that was so rare and precious. Give me a good performance on set tomorrow. Liang Yin was speechless. Hua Jin glanced at her in disdain. I'm treating you to such a classy Western meal. You can't bear to get me kicked out of the set, right? Liang Yin muttered with a red face, I didn't do it on purpose. When Hua Jin heard this, he smiled. I know, but others don't. In today's society, we only look at the results and not the process. No matter what the reason is, you didn't do it well. When Liang Yin was lost in thought, Hua Jin said again, it's not like you can't do it well. You obviously have acting skills, don't you? Really? Yes. Hua Jin revealed a charming smile. You have to believe that you are very outstanding. Don't think that you can't do it. You were just too nervous that day. Hearing this, Liang Yin nodded solemnly. After finishing the Western food, they returned to the hotel. Liang Yin rehearsed her lines with Hua Jin as they walked. When they reached the door, they suddenly saw a girl squatting in the corner of the corridor, crying. She cried so sadly, tears and snot flowing down her face. When Liang Yin saw this, she was just about to walk up when Hua Jin immediately stopped her. What are you doing? I'll go check what's going on. Don't go there. Hua Jin warned her, don't poke your nose into other people's business. Liang Yin didn't think much of it. She's squatting here crying. Maybe there's something troublesome. I'm just checking. As she said this, she pushed Hua Jin aside and walked to the girl's side. She squatted down and asked, what's wrong? The girl was originally immersed in her sadness. When she heard Liang Yin's sudden voice, she was a little shocked. When she saw that it was Hua Jin, she was shocked and couldn't stop crying. She cried even harder. Liang Yin wanted to help her up, but when she finally managed to do so, an entire piece of paper fell to the ground. What is this? Chapter 38:54. When Liang Yin picked up the piece of paper, she realized that it was a medical report issued by the hospital. When Hua Jin saw it, he immediately walked over and took the report from her hand. He glanced at it and realized that it was a pregnancy report. Hua Jin was shocked and asked warily, who are you looking for? The girl said sadly, he doesn't want to see me, and he doesn't believe that the child in my stomach is his. She choked and said, I didn't mean to pester him. I just wanted to ask him how to solve this matter. He thought that I wanted to hold him back. I wanted to be his stumbling block. I love him so much. How can I be his stumbling block? But, in order to follow him, I've already been betrayed. Now, how can I still have the face to go home? Sob. The girl looked very delicate and pretty. She had a very cute face, as if she had walked out of a manga. Such a cute girl, but now she was in such a sorry state. Hua Jin quickly understood what was going on. You're pregnant? The girl covered her face in despair and let out a suppressed sob. Liang Yin was a little confused when she heard this. She also took the report from Hua Jin's hand. She glanced at it and was shocked. He asked suspiciously, who is your child's? I can't say, the girl cried, I can't hurt him, she cried incoherently, and no one knew what she was saying. Liang Yin was baffled by what she heard. Hua Jin understood. Does Tang Yu know about this? Liang Yin looked at him in surprise. Why did Hua Jin suddenly mention Tang Yu's name? Could it be that he was testing something? The girl's shoulders stiffened. Hua Jin immediately understood that he had guessed correctly. The child was indeed Tang Yu's. Tang Yu's room was on the same floor as his. And this girl was holding the pregnancy report and squatting here crying so desperately. Then, Hua Jin guessed that this girl must have something to do with Tang Yu. What should I do? What should I do? The girl trembled with fear. Hua Jin suddenly took Liang Yin's hand and said to her, "Let's go. Don't bother about her, lest you get into trouble." Liang Yin, on the other hand, was a little worried. She looked around and couldn't bear to leave her here. It's not good for her to be here alone, is it? Otherwise, he would send her back. Or send her to the car and take her to the hospital. I don't want to. Don't worry about me. The girl was still crying and screaming. She didn't seem to appreciate it. Although Liang Yin couldn't bear to leave her like this, Hua Jin told her not to care, so she didn't care too much. Hua Jin pulled Liang Yin back to the room. After that, he told her to stay in the room and read the script. Liang Yin asked him where he was going. He said that he was going to call the hotel manager to deal with the girl. Liang Yin's heart warmed when she heard that. Although Hua Jin told her not to meddle in other people's business on the surface, he wasn't as cold as she had imagined. Go ahead. Hua Jin left the room. Liang Yin recalled the scene of the girl squatting in the corner crying and felt a little sad. Was that girl really pregnant with Tang Yu's child? It sounded like Tang Yu didn't admit it and refused to let her in. How could Tang Yu be so cruel? Chapter 38:55. Liang Yin never thought that Tang Yu was such a cold man. Just when Liang Yin was lost in her thoughts, Hua Jin came back. She stood up nervously. Where's the girl? Did she go back? Hua Jin shook his head. When I walked to the elevator, I didn't see her. I went to the front desk, and the manager didn't say he saw her. Did she leave? How is that possible? Hua Jin said. The manager stood at the hotel entrance and said he didn't see the girl. I went to the back door, and the security guard there also said he didn't see her. That's strange. Liang Yin doubted. She couldn't have gone into Tang Yu's room, right? Hua Jin nodded. It's possible. Tang Yu isn't stupid. He knows that if this matter gets out of hand, it'll be bad for him. He can't just let it go. If it gets out of hand, he's now on the rise. It wasn't easy to get this opportunity. He definitely won't make any negative comments at this juncture. If something goes wrong, the investors behind him will want to kill him. Investors? Don't you know? Nowadays, all the popular artists have investors behind them. Liang Yin shook her head blankly. This is not something you should care about. Memorize your lines and try to pass it in one take tomorrow. Liang Yin muttered, I already know my lines. I don't think you're proficient enough. Liang Yin didn't say much, so she obediently picked up the script and memorized it seriously. She tried her best to forget what had just happened and immersed herself into the script. It wasn't until very late that Liang Yin closed the script and went to bed. She had promised Hua Jin that no matter what, she must pass this scene smoothly. She was already familiar with the lines. She couldn't recite them backwards, but she could memorize them thoroughly. As long as she could overcome her nervousness and cross this hurdle, everything else would be nothing. When Hua Jin entered the room, she had already washed up and was ready. Liang Yin rushed to the set and was ready to go on stage. Just as she was preparing herself, she vaguely heard people talking about it. Have you heard? Last night, someone committed suicide by jumping off the rooftop of the hotel. Really? It's true. I heard that she jumped from the rooftop and landed on it. I heard that she didn't die on the spot. She crawled from the place where she fell to the door, but the door was locked from the inside. The girl was sitting there with her blood flowing like a river. She was only discovered in the early morning. Isn't it too tragic? Why do you have to take it so hard? That's just hearsay. Early in the morning, when I was about to come to the set, I saw the ambulance arrive. It carried the body away from the side door. I heard that the hotel doesn't allow people to go through the main entrance. It's too unlucky. They were still muttering behind his back. Liang Yin turned around and glanced at them, only to see that they immediately shut up and lowered their heads. They didn't dare to talk anymore and were busy with their own things. As soon as Hua Jin returned to the resting area, Liang Yin anxiously pulled him back. Did you hear about what happened this morning? What happened? A girl committed suicide by jumping off a building. Liang Yin was a little worried and doubtful. Could it be the girl from yesterday? Hua Jin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you so concerned about her? After all, she was fine when I saw her yesterday. Now that I hear about it, I can't help but sigh. Chapter 38:56. Hearing this, Liang Yin nodded. Hua Jin walked to the side and made a phone call. He looked around and realized that Tang Yu wasn't there. He immediately sensed something fishy. Tang Yu wasn't on set? Didn't he have a scene today? Why wasn't he here? Hua Jin asked around. One of the crew members said that Tang Yu's agent had called to say that Tang Yu had caught a cold yesterday and had a high fever. He had already gone to the hospital for a drip. Hospital? What a coincidence. Not long after, Liang Yin was ready to go on set. While waiting, she kept brewing and trying to get rid of all distracting thoughts. She slowly guided herself into the right state. She immersed herself in the role. When she went on set, her state was obviously different. At this time, no one felt that she was Hua Jin, but a living phoenix. Director Gu saw that. Even though Liang Yin's position was a little too far away from the camera, he couldn't bear to interrupt her. So, he instructed the cameraman to quickly adjust the position of the camera to capture the shot. Liang Yin was in great condition. If it was in the past, no matter what the reason was, if she even stood in the wrong position, she would definitely be scolded. However, Liang Yin was in great condition. She was even better than when Hua Jin was on set. Hua Jin was stunned by Liang Yin's performance. However, he was still a little nervous. He was worried that Liang Yin would break in the next second and not be in such a good state. Hua Jin watched on tenterhooks, but Liang Yin was on top of her game the entire time, especially when she turned around. Her eyes were filled with helplessness and heartache. Tears were welling up in her eyes, but they refused to fall. I'm a human, you're a demon. Humans and demons have different paths. You're the future king of demons, and I'm a Onmyoji. We're destined to be enemies. When she heard the words enemies, Phoenix turned her back even more. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Director Gu couldn't help but feel suffocated by this scene. This scene was too beautiful. He pushed the end further and captured the phoenix's disappointed and sad expression that clearly wanted to maintain its pride. The female lead, Mu Qingge, was originally in a bad mood, but Feng Zhi's mood was so good that she was also brought in. A scene that Hua Jin hadn't done before, Liang Yin had actually done it in one take. Great! Feng Zhi, you're in the right state today. However, Qingge, you weren't in the right state at the start. Because Liang Yin was in such a good state, Director Gu was reluctant to cut the scene. However, the camera and close-up were all focused on Liang Yin. Even if there were any problems, there would be no problem when the time came. Mu Qingge was also a bit surprised. The day before yesterday, Hua Jin had been scolded by the director to the point of crying. His condition today was unexpectedly good. He actually passed it in one try. It was simply unbelievable. Hua Jin walked over. He was also pleasantly surprised by Liang Yin's performance today. It was rare that he wasn't stingy with his appreciation. He praised, "Your condition today is really good. It's even better than what I imagined." Liang Yin still hadn't come out of the right state. She clutched her clothes tightly and felt that her chest was suffocating. She said sadly, "I feel so suffocated. It's so uncomfortable. It's like a ball of cotton is stuffed in my chest." She was too immersed in the role. Because after completely immersing herself in the role, she couldn't get out of it for a long time. Hua Jin hugged her shoulder in heartache. If you're sad, cry it out to vent. Chapter 38:57. Hua Jin didn't expect Liang Yin to be so deeply immersed in her role. After crying for a long time, she finally vented all the emotions that had accumulated in her heart. Mu Qingge also walked over with red eyes and gently patted her shoulder. Hua Jin, you did a great job today. Director Gu walked over and said, for the next 2 days, you should rest well and adjust your emotions. Your scene has already come to an end. Liang Yin nodded. When Hua Jin pulled her out of the set, Hua Jin still couldn't hide his astonishment. Liang Yin, your performance today was beyond my expectations. It was even better than I imagined. Liang Yin said in a serious tone, I've already eaten your high-class Western food. I can't drag you down. Ha. Hua Jin smiled, a Western food can buy you over? That's right. This is the best meal I've ever eaten. I can't accept a reward for nothing. I can't accept your kindness for nothing. Liang Yin paused and suddenly remembered something. Her expression became dignified. Did you hear? There was a rumor today that a girl committed suicide by jumping off a building from a hotel. Could it be the same girl from yesterday? Hua Jin furrowed his brows and shook his head. I'm not sure. First, I haven't seen the picture of the victim. Second, I haven't seen the case report. I really don't know about this. Then, can you ask around? Don't ask around in troubled times. You don't want to get into trouble. Okay, I got it. Liang Yin didn't say anything else. When they returned to the hotel, Hua Jin ordered takeout for Liang Yin and immediately returned to his room. When he returned to his room, he saw Tang Yu and his agent had returned. Hua Jin stopped and silently glanced at him. The latter also glanced at him. But for some reason, Tang Yu's eyes were inexplicably vigilant. He was originally discussing something with his agent, but when he saw Hua Jin's gaze, he suddenly closed his mouth and didn't say anything. Hua Jin narrowed his eyes and quickly smiled. He turned around and smiled at Tang Yu. I didn't see you on set today. Where did you go? Tang Yu became even more vigilant towards Hua Jin's sudden concern. He didn't directly answer his question. Instead, he avoided the question and half-jokingly said, Why are you suddenly so concerned about me? You didn't treat me like this before. You're always so aggressive, as if you have a grudge against me. Hua Jin smiled. How can I praise another artist in front of my artist? I didn't see you on set today. I heard you were feeling unwell. You had a fever? A little. I went to the hospital and got some fluids. I feel much better now. Tang Yu's agent was a little dissatisfied when she saw Tang Yu talking nonsense with the little assistant. Okay, don't talk nonsense with her. Go back to your room and lie down. Tang Yu and his agent returned. His eyelids suddenly twitched violently. He had a feeling that something was about to happen. Brother Ting, are we really going to do this? In the room, Tang Yu was inexplicably restless. His agent, Brother Ting, who was standing in front of him, glared at him disapprovingly. What else can we do? It's already happened. Don't you want to clear your name? Do you want to invite trouble to yourself? But, offending Hua Jin isn't good. Chapter 38:58. Tang Yu listened and did not say anything else. He knew that this time, he would definitely offend Hua Jin. However, there was no other way. Hua Jin was a busybody. The entertainment industry was like this. In order to protect oneself, one had to do this. It's not like I didn't remind you before. You must be clear about the relationship between a man and a woman. Moreover, you were almost caught by the paparazzi many times. Remember, you are no longer who you used to be. Now, you are a commodity. A commodity that is being promoted. If your reputation is ruined because of these things, can you afford to pay the penalty? If something like this happens again in the future, I will definitely not care about you anymore. I will let you fend for yourself. Tang Yu froze when he heard this. He braced himself and said, Understood, Brother Ting. All right, rest early. Tang Yu suddenly stood up nervously. Brother Ting, are you sure it's okay? Hua Jin is Qin Zhou's man. Qin Zhou is a senior executive in Huanyu. Huanyu is backed by Xingyu. Are you sure we can win? Don't worry. We won't fight to the death with him either. After all, it's just a way to divert the public's attention. Although Tang Yu was still a little worried, he nodded. The next day. Early in the morning, a piece of news dominated the headlines of all the major entertainment websites. Hua Jin's underground relationship exposed. Pregnant girlfriend jumped off a building, 2 lives lost. Popular young actor scandal exposed. Mysterious girl jumped off a building at the hotel where the demonite crew stayed. Before the incident, the victim was suspected to have negotiated with Hua Jin and had a dispute, which became the fuse. Early in the morning, this piece of news was undoubtedly a blockbuster for the entertainment industry. It set off a storm. Many media outlets pointed to Hua Jin. Hua Jin had an underground lover? Pregnant and jumped off a building? This piece of news was simply shocking. In front of the public, Hua Jin's image had always been that of an innocent idol. He was very popular and popular with the audience. With his beauty that was prettier than a woman's, he had won a huge fan base. He was one of the few high-quality idols in the entertainment industry who had both fans and audience. Everyone in the industry saw him as the next Gu Xingzi. Gu Xingzi was no longer around. In the entertainment industry, Gu Xingzi used to be the ruler of the entertainment industry and his popularity was high. After his death, it was difficult to find a successor for the time being. However, many people believed that before the next Gu Xingzi appeared, Hua Jin would be the one to take over the role. However, when such a handsome idol was involved in such a shocking scandal, not to mention the fans, even the public who weren't fans couldn't believe it. How is that possible? How could Hua Jin have an underground relationship? He must have gone to the set to promote himself again. Previously, some unscrupulous film crews actually created rumors about Yun Shishir and Hua Jin in order to increase their exposure. Ever since they were warned by Yun Shishir's husband, they deleted the news overnight, clarified and apologized. They didn't dare to do it again for a long time. Now that the scars have healed, they've forgotten the pain. I heard that Hua Jin and Yun Shishir are siblings. How dare they bully our Master Jin? They're obviously trying to offend Xingyu and Huanyu. Chapter 38:59. The news reported that a girl jumped to her death at the hotel where Demon Eyes was staying. Although it looked like an insignificant report, for some reason, all the media outlets and Weibo marketing accounts pointed the finger at Hua Jin. They even said that the girl's suicide was related to him. Some media outlets released insider information that the girl and Hua Jin were lovers and that the girl was Hua Jin's fan. In an instant, the news of Hua Jin sleeping with a fan spread like wildfire. On the internet, there was also a storm. Hua Jin sleeping with a fan? What kind of joke was this? None of the fans believed it. There were even some extreme fans who humiliated the girl, saying that she was the disgrace of the fans and that she was tarnishing Hua Jin's reputation. Some fans even said that even if Hua Jin slept with a fan, so what? That was a fan's benefit. Even if someone wanted to sleep with him, they didn't have the chance. They even said that the girl must be risking her life to tarnish Hua Jin's reputation. At first, the passers-by still had a wait-and-see attitude towards this matter. However, no one knew whether these were true fans or the brainless comments of the internet water army, but they put Hua Jin in a whirlpool of public opinion overnight. In an instant, Hua Jin was at the center of the storm. On the internet, fans, brainless fans, anti-fans, internet water army, the media, and various marketing accounts all had their own factions. They all had their own opinions and were in an uproar. Many fanatical fans rushed to the Weibo of the media outlets that broke the news, insisting that they were tarnishing Hua Jin's reputation. They were making up stories and hurling insults at them. Their original intentions were good. However, the fans' methods were inevitably a little extreme. As a result, the media got hold of their weakness and bombarded them with attacks. Early in the morning, Hua Jin was woken up by Qin Zhou's phone call. Hua Jin, what's going on with that incident? Qin Zhou asked angrily as soon as he opened his mouth. Why did this happen all of a sudden? Hua Jin knew how to deal with things very well. Logically speaking, he would never get into trouble like this. Sleeping with a fan? Lover jumping off a building? 2 lives in one body. What kind of messy news is this? Hua Jin was also confused. He suddenly realized what had happened. It was about that girl. Jump off a building? It was reported by the media? But, what did this have to do with him? How did he get involved? Wasn't this about Tang Yu? Could it be? Could it be that Tang Yu's team is behind this? When Qin Zhou heard this, he was a little suspicious. Is there a conflict between the two of you? It's not really a dispute. It's just that I've been giving him the cold shoulder on set. Why are you giving him that look? I don't like the way he does things. Sleeping with fans and not taking responsibility after sleeping with them. What the hell is this? Hua Jin paused and said, let me see what the internet says first. Your Weibo must have fallen by now. However, don't post anything on Weibo or post anything. Be careful not to be taken out of context and make another article. I understand. With that, Hua Jin hung up the phone and went online to check on the progress. After an afternoon of fermenting, the matter had progressed to an unreasonable war of public opinion. Hua Jin's army of fans was too powerful. They had offended several media outlets at once. The fans firmly believed in their idol's character and insisted that their idol wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. Several marketing accounts were so angry that they were going to hammer it in the afternoon. Chapter 3860. Liang Yin was brought back to the police station for investigation. Hua Jin rushed to Liang Yin's room just as Liang Yin was being taken away by the police. The reason was that she was the last person the victim saw before she died. When they saw Hua Jin, the police remembered that he had also appeared in the surveillance footage, so they took him away as well. Hua Jin and Liang Yin were taken away for investigation. They did not return to the hotel for a day and a night. At the same time, in the afternoon, the media that had been angered by the pink color rushed to release concrete evidence. It was said that after the police investigation, all the evidence showed that this was a suicide case. The phone that had been dropped was unlocked and there was a message in the memo, "Baby, mommy is sorry." The police suspected that she was pregnant. Later, after the autopsy report by the medical examiner, the preliminary judgment was that she was pregnant. As for how long she had been pregnant, it would need to be further diagnosed through amniocentesis. Originally, this was an ordinary suicide case that would not attract the media's attention at all. Perhaps it would occupy a small corner of the newspaper at most and be forgotten just like that. Every year, the number of suicides rose in a straight line. Not everyone who jumped off a building would be noticed. However, because of the hotel involved, the police wanted to find out when the victim entered the hotel and who she had been in contact with before she committed suicide. Therefore, they obtained the surveillance footage from the hotel. However, they found that the girl had been in direct contact with Hua Jin before she committed suicide. In the surveillance footage, the girl entered the hotel and went to the floor where Hua Jin's room was. However, for some reason, she squatted in the corner of the corridor and cried for a long time. Later, Hua Jin and his assistant appeared in the footage. When Hua Jin saw the girl squatting in the corner, he walked over in surprise and reached out to help her up. However, the assistant behind him was a little wary. When the girl saw Hua Jin, she suddenly became very emotional. She danced around as if she wanted to express herself urgently. However, the assistant behind him was obviously very repulsed by the girl and asked Hua Jin several times to ignore her. However, Hua Jin seemed to be hesitant. He looked at the girl and could not bear to do it. From an outsider's point of view, he always felt that there was an inexplicable bond between him and this girl. The media wishfully believed that there was a past relationship between the two of them. However, this was the media's interpretation. But, with the exposure of the surveillance footage and the media's excessive interpretation, it did seem to be the case. With the media as the director, the story unfolded just like that. This girl was a fan of Hua Jin. Coincidentally, during a visit to Hua Jin's set, the two of them met. Gradually, this girl became Hua Jin's bed partner. According to the investigation, the girl had been in and out of the film city many times, and the last person she saw before she died was Hua Jin. Hua Jin seemed to be very concerned about her. However, the assistant behind him was obviously worried that this matter would blow up. He kept urging Hua Jin to return to the room. He even turned around and said a few words to the girl. As there was only a picture and no sound, the media interpreted it as a threat from the assistant. Hua Jin's career was at its peak. If someone used her pregnancy as a threat, it would definitely cause great damage to his reputation. Therefore, the assistant wanted to settle this matter secretly. Chapter 3861. Originally, Hua Jin's fans stubbornly believed that this matter had nothing to do with their idol. However, after Hua Jin and Liang Yin were taken away by the police for investigation, many rumors became even more unbridled. Everyone thought that Hua Jin's arrest by the police was definitely related to this matter. Following this basis, many people started to speculate about the connection between Hua Jin and this matter, and whether there was more to the suspicions and imaginations of those people. Could it be that Hua Jin really slept with his fans? Did that girl and Hua Jin really have that kind of relationship? Was the child in her stomach really Hua Jin's? At this time, Hua Jin and Liang Yin were being interviewed at the police station. For the time being, there was no way for them to know about the rumors from the outside world. However, Qin Zhou would definitely not let this matter continue to fester. He issued a lawyer's letter, and Huanyu's official PO also issued an official announcement. Simply put, the core idea was, 1. Someone used the internet water army to spread rumors and deliberately smear Hua Jin's reputation. 2. Innocent. Absolutely not afraid of any smear. 3. Huanyu is not silent. They are collecting evidence one by one, not evidence of spreading rumors. When the time comes, they will reserve the right to pursue legal action. 4. Huanyu will not let go of anyone who hurts the relationship between Hua Jin and his fans. It had to be said that Huanyu's announcement was absolutely domineering. In other words, those who spread rumors continue to spread rumors, those who spread rumors continue to spread rumors, and those who smear continue to smear. When the truth of this matter is made public, Huanyu will reserve the right to pursue legal action. Qin Zhou's method was especially ruthless. He took the lead by showing his strength and poured a large basin of ice water at the most critical moment of the matter fermenting. On the other hand, in the police station, Hua Jin and Liang Yin were separated to cooperate with the police to take statements. The police summoned them because they were the last people the victim saw before she died. Although the case had been preliminarily concluded that it was suicide and not homicide. After investigating the scene, there was no other possibility other than jumping off a building. However, the police still needed to investigate the truth of the matter. Now, there were some marketing accounts slandering Hua Jin, saying that the forces behind him had already come forward to suppress this matter. In order to prevent the scandal from spreading, Huanyu had used many means to prevent the situation from developing further. Nowadays, many people believe that people with power and influence could even interfere with the justice system because of the words, shady deals. Netizens were very simple-minded. Only a few of them were rational. After being instigated like this, it was inevitable that they would suspect that Hua Jin had a powerful background and that there was a shady operation behind the scenes. But, the truth is the truth, no matter how many times you ask. Liang Yin said calmly, that day, I saw her squatting in the corridor, crying very sadly. I didn't know what had happened, so I went to ask her out of concern. Is this the first time you've met? Yes. This is the first time I've seen her. There was no contact before? No. I heard rumors that she's your girlfriend. Chapter 3862. Liang Yin was very calm and obedient. No matter what the police asked, her answers were reasonable and well-founded. She enunciated each and every word clearly. After all, this matter had nothing to do with her to begin with. She was just telling the truth. Although she was nervous, she had to answer well. Otherwise, if she didn't answer well, the police would misunderstand and interpret it. Then, wouldn't it cause trouble for Hua Jin? On the other side, Hua Jin also cooperated with the police to complete the investigation. He reported the conversation with the girl to the police, including the unimaginable relationship between Tang Yu and the girl. I suspect that this girl's death is related to Tang Yu. Hua Jin said without hesitation. Isn't the autopsy still ongoing? The forensic doctor might as well take evidence from the fetus in the stomach. Maybe he can find a strong clue. He was too calm. Not to mention that Qin Zhou was behind it, he had nothing to do with the responsibility of this matter. Therefore, no matter how many times he did it, Hua Jin's answer had already divided the responsibility clearly. And for some reason, some of the information from the police investigation leaked out. At first, the girl was pregnant and committed suicide. It was just a rumor. However, some of the police and forensic files were leaked out, and it confirmed the truth of the girl's pregnancy. On the other side, some people couldn't sit still. At the hotel. In the room, Tang Yu looked at his manager pacing back and forth anxiously in front of him. He said worriedly, "Brother Ting, what should we do? That woman seems to be pregnant. It can't really be my child, right?" The manager turned around and glared at him angrily. "Don't you know whether it's your child or not?" How would I know? How can I be sure that this woman isn't trying to blame me? I've only slept with her once. How would I know who the father of this child is? Of course, I won't admit it. Tang Yu had always been hoping for a fluke. This girl wasn't pregnant at all. Back then, he received a call from this girl. On the phone, the girl stammered that she was pregnant and asked him what to do. Tang Yu didn't even have a deep impression of who she was or what she looked like. He questioned who she was and what her purpose was. When the girl saw that he had turned his back on her, her heart was broken. In fact, this girl named Su Ning was one of Tang Yu's loyal fans. In order to chase after her idol, she didn't hesitate to betray her family. She quit school and went to Film City to visit her. She didn't expect that under a freak combination of circumstances, she would accidentally bump into Tang Yu and was brought back to the hotel by Tang Yu. It was a night of passion. She didn't expect such a thing to happen between her and Tang Yu. But that night, Tang Yu was drunk. When he woke up and found her lying beside him, he instantly realized the seriousness of the matter. He brought a strange woman back to the hotel. Fortunately, he was not caught by the reporters at the time. In addition, he wasn't famous at the moment. Therefore, he negotiated with this girl. The purpose of the negotiation was to prevent this night and this girl from becoming a stumbling block for him after he became famous. The girl felt a chill in her heart. She did not raise any conditions. She only said, "After today, I will never appear before you again." Tang Yu was a little surprised. He didn't expect that this girl didn't mention any conditions. Chapter 3863. Su Ning didn't expect that she would spend a night with the Prince Charming in her heart. However, she didn't expect that Tang Yu, who was originally high and mighty in her heart, would have such a frivolous side. For such a man, she didn't hesitate to fall out with her family and be betrayed by her family. However, perhaps it was because of their intimate relationship, Su Ning's attitude towards Tang Yu had slightly changed. After that day, she still followed Tang Yu. She still paid attention to everything about Tang Yu in the film and television city. However, when the fans gathered, she inexplicably felt that she was a level higher than those fans. She was special, she was different. Because she had slept with Tang Yu. She and Tang Yu had a physical relationship. Other fans who wanted to see Tang Yu had to stay far away from him. But she had been in Tang Yu's room and had sex with him. Slowly, she began to have ambitions. After leaving Tang Yu's room that day, she didn't buy the morning after pill as Tang Yu had instructed. She did it on purpose. She didn't know if she would get pregnant this time. But if she could get pregnant, then this was a gift from God to her and Tang Yu. She must cherish it. This way, she might be promoted from a fan to Tang Yu's girlfriend. In the fan group, many fans were envious of her. Because she was one of the few who had close contact with Tang Yu. Of course, she wouldn't tell the other fans about what happened that day. She only said that she had close contact with Tang Yu. The envy of the other fans made her feel as though she was floating in the air with a card in hand. A month later, by chance, she found out that she was pregnant. However, this pregnancy was obviously not the right time. At that time, she was already at the end of her rope. She couldn't even afford the rent. So, she took the pregnancy test kit, mustered up her courage, and went to the hotel where Tang Yu was staying, wanting to see him. She knew that Tang Yu wasn't at the hotel, so she called Tang Yu and told him about her pregnancy. Tang Yu's first reaction was that she was lying to him. Tell me, what's your purpose? Tang Yu was obviously angry when he learned about this. Did you set me up that night? Tang Yu obviously thought that Su Ning deliberately set him up that night. Didn't I tell you to take the morning after pill? Why? Didn't you take it? Su Ning stammered and explained that she forgot. Tang Yu snorted. Forgot? I think you're doing it on purpose. Let's not talk about anything else for the time being. First of all, I have to suspect whether you're really pregnant or not. We've only done it once, how could it be so coincidental? Furthermore, how can I be sure that even if you're really pregnant, the child in your stomach is mine? Tang Yu obviously didn't believe it. It was just once. How could she get pregnant so coincidentally? Su Ning was at a loss for words. She could only say that she was really panicking at that time and really forgot about this matter. Both Tang Yu and Tang Yu, S Ning Tang Yu. Su Ning Tang Yu, STSU. Tang Yu refused to admit it. He even warned him again and again. If you dare to mess around, I swear I'll teach you a lesson. Chapter 38-64. Now, the little life in her belly was growing up with hope. Su Ning knew in her heart that she deliberately didn't take birth control pills because she was pregnant. She thought that if she was lucky enough to get pregnant, at least she could use the child to ask for an explanation from Tang Yu. However, she was wrong. In her mind, Tang Yu should be a very responsible Prince Charming, just like how he usually was in front of his fans. He was gentle, responsible, and knew how to take care of people. He even made it clear that he liked children very much. If there was a chance in the future, he must have 3 children, preferably girls. He liked little princesses the most. This was selling his character. All the male stars knew this well. A handsome man who loved children, spoiled his wife, and spoiled his children was undoubtedly the fantasy object of many women. But Su Ning obviously confused fantasy with reality. Now, Tang Yu had accepted the show and was counting on this show to make his presence known and increase his popularity. When the series was broadcast, the team even thought about how to tie up Hua Jin, tie up the crew, and carry out a series of hype. With Tang Yu's appearance and some of his recent connections, even if he couldn't be as popular as Hua Jin in the future, he would definitely become a popular young star. In such a rising period, for a fan who had a one-night stand and a child who hadn't formed yet, was he really going to give up such a good future? Was it possible? What a joke. Responsibility? Responsibility? That was just a fan's wishful thinking. Su Ning couldn't take the blow and jumped off a building. This was also unexpected to Tang Yu. But the problem was Su Ning really pregnant with his flesh and blood? Of course, Tang Yu didn't feel sorry for the child. But if the final autopsy report came out and the child was genetically identified as his flesh and blood, then, with this evidence, he couldn't wash it clean. Evidence always doesn't lie. Tang Yu had a headache. Originally, he was hoping to frame this matter on Hua Jin. However, he had obviously overlooked this point. About the child, he always suspected that Su Ning lied to him and had other intentions. But, Brother Ting, what should we do? Tang Yu was anxious. Do you think the forensic doctor can find out who the child's biological father is through the autopsy? Generally speaking, DNA samples collected from a corpse's uterus should be sent to the database for analysis and comparison. If it's really your child, we can find out. Tang Yu's face turned pale. So, I want to ask you, is this child really yours? Tang Yu shook his head blankly. I don't know. I really don't know. I thought she was lying to me. Back then, I only had one night with her. How could it be that she's with another man? I don't know. Things suddenly became troublesome. I originally wanted to divert attention, but I didn't expect that B*TCH to actually have a child in her stomach. Chapter 3865. Now, this is the only way. Anyway, let's suppress this matter first. Tang Yu paused and sighed. I didn't expect it to turn out like this. I didn't expect that Su Ning would jump off a building. The manager said angrily, be more careful in the future. After all, you're a public figure and your fame is slowly rising. In the future, there will be more and more leopard feet mosquitoes waiting for you. You have to figure out your private life and don't get involved with those messy people. Then, he added, remember, you're a commodity now. Don't always think about your past self. If you lose your resources because of this again, be careful that the higher-ups don't ban you. Tang Yu said with a guilty conscience. Understood. At the police station. Hua Jin and Liang Yin finished their statements and walked out of the police station. Qin Zhou was already waiting outside. Hua Jin saw Qin Zhou and walked over with a gloomy expression. He cursed angrily, these policemen are too annoying. They asked the same question more than 10 times. More than 10 times. I'm going crazy from answering. Are they treating me like a criminal suspect? Qin Zhou comforted him, all right, since the interrogation is over, leave quickly. They're not treating you as a criminal suspect. You're witnesses, the last 2 people who saw Su Ning. So, they'll definitely focus on collecting your testimony. In order to make sure your testimony is valid, they'll ask several times and verify it. Hua Jin was about to vomit. Liang Yin also looked very tired. She suddenly understood why Hua Jin was so vigilant when she went up to the girl worriedly. It turned out that he was worried about her getting into trouble. Hua Jin asked, what's the public saying now? A lot of marketing accounts are still hyping up that the girl is your lover. They're still saying that I slept with fans? Hua Jin said angrily, this is too much. Who's behind this? Liang Yin was a little surprised when she heard this. She was brought back to the police station as soon as the incident happened, so she had no idea what had happened. Upon hearing Hua Jin mention this matter, someone actually suspected that Hua Jin slept with his fans? How did such a deranged thing get out? Liang Yin asked anxiously, what happened? What do you mean by sleeping with fans? What the hell is going on? Qin Zhou glanced at Hua Jin, shook his head, and said to Liang Yin, it's not convenient to talk here. Let's get in the car and go back to the hotel. Hua Jin and Liang Yin looked at each other. Liang Yin felt a little uneasy, but she didn't say anything. So she got in the car with Hua Jin. In the car, Qin Zhou said to Hua Jin, now, many marketing accounts on the internet are hyping up your underground relationship with that girl. But don't worry, I already have all the substantial evidence, but we don't have to rush to clarify anything now. Liang Yin was a little nervous when she heard this. Why? Speaking of which, aren't these marketing accounts too much? Why aren't they rushing to clarify things? Qin Zhou smiled and winked mysteriously. He said to Hua Jin and Liang Yin, be patient and watch the show. When Liang Yin heard this, she still didn't understand what was going on. However, Hua Jin obviously understood Qin Zhou's intention. He was planning to turn the tables on them. Chapter 3866. What's going on with these marketing accounts? It's impossible for them to publish such a large-scale defamation. Someone must be behind this. What do you think? Qin Zhou said slowly, who is the father of the child in this girl's belly? If this matter is exposed, who will be at a disadvantage? Hua Jin frowned and asked suspiciously, could it be Tang Yu? At the mention of this name, Liang Yin was a little dumbfounded. Impossible. She frowned and said, Tang Yu wouldn't do such a thing, right? Hua Jin listened but didn't say anything. He could understand. Liang Yin was Tang Yu's fan. No matter how she changed her mind, at least she still had some feelings for him. Qin Zhou listened and said expressionlessly, do you think what you saw is real? Liang Yin, you're still too young. As long as you see it on TV, whether it's a reality show or an interview, all the created characters have a script. Liang Yin was startled and hesitated. She quickly explained, I'm not defending Tang Yu or anything. Don't misunderstand. It's just. Tang Yu wouldn't do such a shady thing, right? Qin Zhou said calmly, it's normal in the entertainment industry to do anything for your own benefit. Hua Jin didn't say anything. He had already guessed who the mastermind behind this was. Although he had a guess, he didn't dare to confirm it. But, since Qin Zhou said so, it had to be true. Qin Zhou said to Hua Jin, for the next 2 days, I'll cancel all of your events and suspend all interviews with the media. The production team won't be filming for the time being and will just stay in the hotel. We'll see how they perform then. After a pause, he said slowly, I'm quite curious. If we don't do anything, how will they react? Liang Yin and Hua Jin listened and didn't say anything. After returning to the hotel, Hua Jin and Liang Yin returned to their respective rooms. But after returning to her room, Liang Yin thought about it carefully. She felt that if she had listened to Hua Jin and not meddled in other people's business, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Tang Yu. Was it really Tang Yu? She didn't expect the Prince Charming in her heart to have such a dirty side. Did Tang Yu really use the internet water army to stir up public opinion to defame Hua Jin? How could he do that? It's too much. If that was the case, Liang Yin couldn't forgive herself. Feeling a little restless, she stood up and walked to the man's room. Standing at the door, she gently knocked on it. After a while, Hua Jin walked over to open the door. He was surprised to see her standing outside the door. What's wrong? Hua Jin, is it convenient for me to come in and talk? Hua Jin hummed an acknowledgement and stepped aside. Liang Yin went in and closed the door. Hua Jin calmly walked to the sofa, sat down, and looked at her. Tell me, what's the matter? Liang Yin asked cautiously, this time, did I get into big trouble? I should have listened to you. At that time, I saw that girl squatting in the corner. I shouldn't have gone forward. Hua Jin didn't understand her intention at first. But when he knew it was because of this, he couldn't help but smile. So it's because of this? Chapter 3867. Although Qin Zhou definitely had the ability to settle it, she still felt very guilty about this matter. Hua Jin said, maybe this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Tang Yu's ambition is so big. Since he dared to do such a thing, he must be willing to accept the consequences. Bickering with Huan Yu, he must have a death wish. He paused and said, but you can't blame him. Artists don't have much autonomy at all. Moreover, to a company, an artist is a company's product. Goods. Yes, they have no dignity. As Hua Jin said this, he sighed deeply, picked up the beer on the coffee table, and asked, want a drink? Liang Yin glanced at him. If it was in the past, she would definitely refuse. She didn't like to drink and couldn't drink. If it was beer, she would get drunk easily after a few glasses. However, looking at Hua Jin leaning on the sofa with a tired but cynical expression, holding the beer can and drinking mouthful after mouthful, she felt that something was wrong. She didn't know why, but he inexplicably gave her a very lonely feeling. For the first time, Liang Yin nodded. Okay. But I can't drink very much. There's not much beer either. Even if you want to drink more, you won't have the chance. As Hua Jin said this, he walked to the small fridge and took out all the beer inside. Liang Yin glanced at it and was shocked by the lineup. So much? Can you finish it all? You can't drink well, but that doesn't mean I can't drink well. Liang Yin sat down beside him, took a can of beer, and took a sip. She drank more elegantly, one mouthful after another. Hua Jin, on the other hand, had already drunk 3 mouthfuls of beer. His gaze was empty as he looked at the ceiling aimlessly and said coldly, do you know how I entered the entertainment industry? Being an actor must be your dream, right? Liang Yin said, and you're so good-looking. How did you get chosen by a talent scout? I was sold into the entertainment industry by my father. Hua Jin smiled calmly and curled his lips. He seemed to be mocking him, but at the same time, he seemed to be able to see the resentment between his brows. He took a sip of beer and gulped it down again. His expression became even more gloomy. Biological father. When Liang Yin heard this, she suddenly reacted. It was no wonder that the man did not question her when she expressed her hatred for her parents back then. Neither did he console her like the others did. Instead, he said coldly, "That's because such irresponsible parents really exist in this world." Therefore, was he a father as well as a selfish and irresponsible man? Sell him into the entertainment industry? Back then, my father drank, gambled, and did drugs. He loathed me because I had my mother's blood flowing in my veins. They say love the house and its crow. Hate a person, it is the same. He hated me, so when he was chased by loan sharks, he didn't hesitate to sell his own flesh and blood. For some reason, Hua Jin suddenly brought up this past. Other than Yun Shishir, he had never mentioned it to anyone else. Originally, he shouldn't have mentioned this to Liang Yin. However, for some reason, he said it naturally, as if it was a common occurrence. Liang Yin didn't quite understand the meaning of the word sell. Sell? Chapter 3868. Hua Jin put down the can of beer, took a deep look at it and smiled calmly. Yes, that's right. I got to where I am through the unspoken rules. I was indeed kept by a few sugar daddies. You can think of me as a gigolo or a canary in a cage. Anyway, I don't have the right to choose my own life. At that time, his grades were not bad. He had always hoped to be able to enter an ideal university through his studies. After graduation, he would have a good job, a wife whom he loved deeply, and a warm family. However, ever since his mother left home, his hopes were dashed. Endless gambling debts, fear, uneasiness, and a turbulent life made him feel insecure. At that time, I knew that I had been sold by my father. However, at that moment, I actually felt very fortunate that I could finally leave that man. Unknowingly, Hua Jin had already drunk 4 cans of beer, and his voice was somewhat ethereal. Originally, his alcohol tolerance was very good. After all, he had been drinking in bars for many years. In order to cater to those sugar daddies, he had been constantly training his alcohol tolerance. However, perhaps it was because of the exchange of souls. Liang Yin's alcohol resistance seemed to be pitifully low. Liang Yin's alcohol tolerance was very low. She could not drink at all. Hence, Hua Jin, who was substituted into her body, had an extremely poor alcohol tolerance. So much so that after drinking a few cans of beer, he was already on the verge of collapsing. After leaving my father, I don't know how to live for many years. However, I believe that as long as I can get through it, I will definitely usher in a bright day. As Hua Jin spoke, he suddenly turned his head to look at her. Do you know how much effort I have put in for the freedom I have now, for the life I have now? His eyes were red, and his voice suddenly became extremely cold. No matter who it is, I will not allow him to destroy all my efforts. Hua Jin drank another can of beer in one gulp, shook his head, and was obviously somewhat helpless. It's really strange, why am I telling you all these? Liang Yin did not expect that he would tell her all these. She actually felt a little warm in her heart. Did this mean that he treated her as a close friend? I know Tang Yu is on the rise now. He can't afford any accidents. If this matter is exposed to the public that the girl is pregnant with his flesh and blood, perhaps without good PR, his reputation will be ruined. So, he wants to sacrifice me, use me, and step on my reputation to climb up. Don't believe the superstar's superficial impressions. Hua Jin said in a self-deprecating manner, just like how my character is set to be a young man in ancient costumes. So, I always have to dress up in front of my fans and act courteous like a delicate and pretty boy. I've had enough of this role-playing. Every day, he had to follow the script. Even when he was asleep, he couldn't forget his character setting. When I earn enough money, or when I have someone I like, I will choose to retire. Quit the entertainment industry, get married, have children. No matter what I do in the future, I will definitely not be an actress. Chapter 3869. Liang Yin was prone to getting drunk, but for some reason, even after drinking 2 cans of beer, she didn't feel tipsy at all. On the other hand, Hua Jin, who had too much to drink, started to ramble on. Perhaps it was because he was drunk, but his speech was incoherent. However, Liang Yin listened attentively. From his childhood to when he entered the entertainment industry, his emotions were always rambling on and on without rhyme or reason. Eventually, the more Hua Jin talked, the heavier his eyelids became. Slowly, he fell asleep leaning on Liang Yin's shoulder. Liang Yin leaned on the sofa and Hua Jin leaned on her shoulder. The heaviness on one side of her shoulder made her feel strangely calm. She didn't dare to move, for fear that she would wake Hua Jin up. Hence, she maintained this position until she felt sleepy and closed her eyes. Dawn, early in the morning. Hua Jin was woken up by the cold. Even though the heater was turned on in the room, when dawn came, the weather was even colder. He was wearing thin clothes and had sobered up. He opened his eyes and looked out of the window. The sky was already brightening. He felt that he was leaning on someone's shoulder. When he lifted his head, he saw Liang Yin sitting on the sofa with her eyes closed. She allowed him to lean on her shoulder and maintained this position, not moving at all. The beer cans on the coffee table were scattered all over. Hua Jin felt a little awkward. He felt that leaning on her shoulder made him, a big man, feel like a helpless little bird. He woke her up with a gentle push. Hey! Liang Yin woke up immediately. She wasn't very sleepy to begin with, so she woke up with a push. However, when she woke up, she could clearly feel that one of her shoulders was so sore that it felt like it was going to collapse. Ugh, she held her shoulder and grimaced in pain. It felt like it was dislocated. Hua Jin saw her pained expression and realized that he seemed to have fallen asleep leaning on her shoulder. His shoulders must be sore from carrying it like this. Hua Jin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He laughed and said, "Are you going to stay in this position without moving?" Liang Yin said unhappily, "What else? I was drunk yesterday and I was afraid that if I moved, you would wake up and go crazy. That's why I didn't dare to move." Hua Jin said awkwardly, "Who said I was drunk? I'm not drunk, and I won't go crazy." He paused for a moment and said in disdain, "Is it because your body is weak? When I drank in the past, I didn't get dizzy from drinking so little beer. I can't hold my liquor well." Liang Yin twisted her shoulders, stood up and muttered, I'm going back to my room to rest." Hua Jin saw her stand up and lonely back, and thought that his tone just now was a little bad. In addition, he slept on her shoulder for a long time, and she did not complain, as if she was afraid to disturb him, so she was so motionless, silly and cute. He suddenly said, "Have you seen a sunrise before?" Liang Yin turned around in confusion and shook her head. Hua Jin blinked mysteriously. "I know a place where it's very beautiful to watch a sunrise." Liang Yin's eyes lit up with anticipation. "Really?" "On the rooftop of the hotel." Liang Yin tiptoed behind Hua Jin, pushed open the door, and walked to the rooftop. Chapter 3870. The wind on the rooftop of the hotel was strong and cold. Hence, both of them had changed into a large cotton-padded jacket. This hotel was the most upscale and luxurious hotel in the film studio. The rooftop was on the 25th floor, and this was the best time to watch the sunrise. The film studio was surrounded by mountains on all sides. The mountains were also developed by consortiums to film special scenes. Many historical films and anti-war films were shot on this mountain. Because it was surrounded by mountains on all sides, there was nothing to block the view. One could see the horizon at a glance. The endless mountain range and the horizon in the distance were gradually changing red, orange, and yellow, from the horizon to the sky. It was unbelievably beautiful. Hua Jin held Liang Yin's hand, walked to the edge of the rooftop, and sat down. At first, Liang Yin was still a little nervous and hesitant. Sitting on the edge of the rooftop, their feet were suspended in the air. If they were nervous and accidentally trembled, they would fall and be smashed to pieces. Hua Jin sat down as if nothing had happened. Liang Yin, however, stood to one side, a little scared, not daring to sit down. Hua Jin lifted his head and looked at her, a little puzzled. Aren't you going to sit? Liang Yin was trembling. Must we sit in such a scary place to watch the sunrise? If we fall, it'll be over. It won't happen. Just don't move. What's the difference between sitting here and sitting on the sofa? If you think it's scary, it's just a psychological effect. She didn't know why, but his words seemed to have woken her up. Yes, what was the difference between sitting here and sitting on the sofa? It was just that below the sofa was flat ground, while below the rooftop was the sky. This was just like when she was acting with Hua Jin in a room, she didn't feel nervous at all. It was just that when they reached the set, the director and the other actors were there, she started to feel uncontrollably nervous. It was just because of her psychological perception. Liang Yin deliberately didn't look at the sky below and carefully sat down beside Hua Jin. Even though she kept telling herself that there was nothing to be afraid of and that as long as she didn't move, she wouldn't fall. However, he was still a little nervous. Hua Jin pointed at the distant horizon. Do you see that? Her attention was quickly diverted. I saw it. Sitting here to watch the sunrise is the best spot. Hua Jin took a deep breath of the fresh dawn air. The air was a little damp, accompanied by the cool dew frost. He said indifferently, do you know? In the past, I remember when I was in my teens, I acted for the first time. As an actor, I was bullied badly in the crew. At that time, I was still young and lived in the crevices every day. I felt so oppressed, so I thought that since living was so tiring, I might as well end my life. Liang Yin was slightly surprised. He didn't look like the kind of person who would be depressed. Why, how could he have such a dark past? Hua Jin raised his eyebrows and seemed to have guessed what she was thinking. Do you find it unbelievable? I never thought that I would be so weak. Chapter 3871. Hua Jin shook his head in confusion. I don't know. I just feel that there's no joy in life. At that time, other than filming, I was lying in the hotel and eating very little. I kept thinking about where people come from and where they're going. What's the point of living in this world? His question stumped Liang Yin. Indeed, what was the point of living? She couldn't understand it either. That day, when I walked here, it was as if I was jumping off the rooftop. However, when I sat on the edge of the rooftop, it happened to be sunrise. I don't know why, but I just watched the sunrise quietly. The strange thing was that it was clearly very cold that day, just like today, but as I watched the sunrise bit by bit, the bright rays of dawn seemed to sweep away all the haze in my heart. As Hua Jin spoke, his lips curled up. It's amazing. At that time, I actually thought that it was great to be alive and to be able to see such a beautiful scene. If I were to die, I definitely wouldn't be able to see it. As long as I live, there will be miracles. If I were to die, perhaps I wouldn't be able to see anything. Unknowingly, on the horizon, a fire plate slowly rose up. The horizon was dyed even brighter. At that moment, the clouds on the horizon seemed to have been set on fire, filling up the sky. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Liang Yin was deeply awed by the scene before her eyes. It was too beautiful. It was unbelievably beautiful. No wonder Hua Jin said that when he saw such a beautiful scene, he actually felt that life was beautiful. There were too many beautiful things in the world, just like this enchanting scenery. Hua Jin said, I hope that one day, I don't have to act anymore. I don't have to be an actor. I have a family and a woman I love deeply. Then, we can go to Wineglass Bay in Tasmania, Australia, to see the sinister castle of Chittergach, to the blue hole on Zakynthos Island in Greece, to the ice canyon in Greenland. But before that, I must work hard to act and earn a lot of money. Liang Yin said emotionally, what a beautiful dream. Right? Hua Jin glanced at her. In his charming eyes, there seemed to be a little bit of stars. When he looked at her, she actually became nervous. Her heart was pounding, and she didn't know where to put her hands. Hua Jin obviously didn't notice her nervous expression and said, "It's better than guarding this empty skyscraper." Living in the city was depressing. Actually, there are many beautiful places in this world. It's just that we can't imagine them. Liang Yin looked at Hua Jin's breathtakingly beautiful side profile and suddenly felt a little envious. It was not Hua Jin who was envious. Instead, she was the girl who would accompany Hua Jin to see the beautiful scenery of the world in the future. How lucky! I also want to travel around the world. Liang Yin said, "If I had money, I would go to the seaside. The sea must be very beautiful, but I haven't seen the real sea yet. I'll take you there when the filming is over." When Liang Yin heard this, she felt inexplicably excited. "Really? You promised me. You can't go back on your words." Of course. Anyway, after the filming is over, I was planning to go to Bali for a vacation." Bali. Wow. Chapter 3872. Liang Yin sighed. Suddenly, she realized something and probed, "But if we can't get over it for the rest of our lives, what about your dream?" Hua Jin's face fell. "Can you not say such depressing things?" Liang Yin was speechless. She held back her laughter and pretended to be serious as she said, "When the time comes, I can only be the girl by your side and accompany you to travel around the world. How's that? You won't lose out anyway." Liang Yin nudged his arm gently and bargained, "If you can't get over it, I'll act for you and earn money for you. Then, we'll travel around the world together. How's that?" Hua Jin glanced at her in disdain. "It's impossible that we can't get it back." Liang Yin asked indignantly, "What if?" Hua Jin closed his eyes in pain. "I choose to die." "Why?" Liang Yin was scared out of her wits. She didn't know if he was serious or not. Hua Jin asked her seriously, "What do you think will happen to us if we can't get it back?" "What will happen? I'm a guy, but my body is a girl's. If I meet a girl I like in the future, what should I do?" "That's right. Don't tell me I have to turn her gay and make her like girls instead of guys." Liang Yin laughed out loud. "If you successfully turn her gay, she'll get it back at this time." Ha ha ha. Hua Jin's face turned pale. This girl could still laugh. Liang Yin held back her laughter and suggested seriously, "Since you're a girl now, why don't you change your sexual orientation? You can try liking guys. Who knows, maybe you're bisexual." Liking guys? How was that possible? This was simply a disaster like the end of the world. For some reason, Gong Jie's face suddenly appeared in Hua Jin's mind. Just the thought of Gong Jie made him shudder inexplicably. Then, he thought of him having sex with Gong Jie naked and being pinned down by Gong Jie. He felt disgusted. "I don't want to." Hua Jin said unhappily, "It's so humiliating to be pinned down by a guy. Actually, being a girl is pretty good. You're just not used to it yet." Hua Jin retorted, "Then, are you willing to fall in love with a girl?" Liang Yin nodded. Of course I'm willing to." "Oh." All of a sudden, Hua Jin leaned closer to her wickedly and breathed out meaningfully. "Since you've said so, I'll go find a man tomorrow and give it a try, alright? Let's see if I'm a hidden bisexual. Do I like guys?" Liang Yin's of it. She immediately protested, "No." "Why not?" Hua Jin pretended to be serious. "Didn't you say to let me try? Who knows, maybe I'll really like dating guys." Liang Yin immediately changed her words. "It's not certain if you can change back." "What if you change back?" "Then, break up with that guy." Hua Jin replied nonchalantly, "Who knows, maybe I've really fallen in love with men, just like what you said." "What about you? Maybe you'll fall for girls too." Chapter 3873. "Oh, I see." Seeing that Hua Jin was smiling evilly, Liang Yin pretended to compromise and said, "All right, go and find a man then." I'd like to experience what it's like to be a man. When Hua Jin heard this, he was dumbfounded. Huh? What? Liang Yin smiled mysteriously. It's the feeling of tightness when you're with a woman. Hua Jin's brain almost couldn't wrap around it. When he realized what Liang Yin meant by tightness, the corners of his lips twitched. "I-oh. You're so dirty." "Humph. Anyway, if you dare to find a man, I'll sleep with your fans." Hua Jin said unhappily, "Do you know what it's like to sleep with a woman? Isn't it the same thing? Just follow your instincts." Hua Jin suddenly moved closer to her. His beautiful face was just inches away from hers. His gaze fell on her face. Between his red lips, his breath smelled like orchids. "You look like you can't wait. Why don't we give it a try?" His words were so flirtatious, and the breath from his red lips instantly burned her face red. She didn't know why, but even though Hua Jin was a woman, she still couldn't resist the pheromones from his body. Even though they were of different genders, Liang Yin's heart was beating like thunder. When Hua Jin saw that she was blushing, he was a little surprised. "Why is your face so red?" Liang Yin pushed him instinctively. Hua Jin immediately grabbed the railing tightly and said gloomily, "Hey, be careful. What if you accidentally push me down?" Seeing that he was still sitting steadily, Liang Yin said unhappily, "Didn't you say that sitting here is no different from sitting on the sofa? What's important is the mentality. Have you ever seen someone being pushed from the sofa to the ground?" Hua Jin was speechless. He had nothing to say. "You've trained your mouth well." Hua Jin couldn't help but smile as he turned to look at the horizon. As the sun gradually rose, it drove away some of the cold. Liang Yin silently looked at the horizon and gently sucked in a cold breath. She suddenly asked, "Can we only stay in the hotel for the next few days?" Just treat it as a holiday." "What is Qin Zhou thinking? I think he must be trying to beat us at our own game. These days, he must be trying to dig out the mastermind behind those marketing accounts. When he has the evidence, he'll catch Tang Yu and the others in one fell swoop. It's so complicated. I thought being a celebrity was easy. Who would have thought, there's so much scheming involved." Hua Jin disagreed. "What do you think? No matter what profession it is, there's no lack of scheming." With that, he stood up and jumped off the rooftop. He turned around and extended his hand to Liang Yin. "Come on. Let's go back to the room and rest." Liang Yin nodded. She put her hand in his palm and stood up carefully. "Be careful. The wind was a little strong." Liang Yin held his hand and walked down from the rooftop. Just as she was about to step in, she accidentally twisted her heel. Hua Jin clearly felt that her body was slightly swaying and immediately pulled her towards him. Little did he know that Liang Yin, who was 1.8 meters tall, suddenly fell onto him due to the huge inertia. Chapter 3874. Ugh, both of them let out a muffled groan. Liang Yin propped herself up with her palms on the ground. However, she could clearly feel some inexplicable changes in her body. Of course, Hua Jin felt it too. It was as if something strange was pushing against him. He didn't realize it at first and muttered in a daze, "What's that? Do you have a key on you?" Liang Yin also found it strange. "What do you mean?" "You're pushing against me." Before he could finish his sentence, Hua Jin suddenly realized what was pushing against him. He immediately shut up and glanced awkwardly at Liang Yin's lower body. Liang Yin followed his gaze and glanced at it. The two of them immediately separated awkwardly. Hua Jin said in disdain, "Hey, what are you thinking about?" "What? How would I know what's going on? It's just sticking up for no reason. This means that you must be imagining things in your head for you to have such a reaction." "What imagining could I be imagining? I'm not going to take the blame for this." Hua Jin glanced at her and stood up. He straightened his messy clothes and said, "Let's go. Let's go back to our rooms." With that, he turned around and left. Liang Yin stood up and patted the dust off her body. She muttered unhappily, how ungentlemanly, humph. The two of them went back to their rooms. In the afternoon, Hua Jin was woken up by a series of hurried knocks on the door. He walked to the door and opened it. Liang Yin was holding his cell phone. She said to him, "Someone called several times looking for you. My cell phone was on silent mode. I saw it when I woke up, but I didn't know how to reply." Hua Jin's cell phone was still with Liang Yin. Even though all his social media accounts were logged in and managed by him, his cell phone was still with Liang Yin. Hua Jin took the cell phone and looked at it. It was a call from Yun Shishir. Hua Jin had a headache and knocked on his head. "Help me reply. What's going on? What's the matter?" Hua Jin reminded her worriedly, "She's the most important person to me. You have to be gentle, do you hear me?" "I heard you." Liang Yin saw how nervous he was and asked in confusion, "Who is she to you? You seem to be very nervous." At the mention of Yun Shishir, Hua Jin's expression softened. "She's my sister." "Sister?" "Yes." Then, he added, "Ask her what's the matter." Liang Yin nodded and dialed the phone back. After a while, it was quickly connected. She said, "Hello." Yun Shishir's smiling voice came from the other end. "Jean, are you filming?" "No. I heard, something happened recently." "You're in some trouble, aren't you?" "Yeah, I'm in some trouble. I heard from Qin Zhou that you've stopped all your work recently. Take it as a holiday. Since you're on holiday, let's go to the hot springs together." "Hot springs?" Liang Yin looked at Hua Jin in surprise. Hua Jin immediately put the call on speaker. "Yeah, I've already made a reservation. It's at the hot springs in the middle of the mountain. I've booked the entire hotel. Let's go together." When Liang Yin heard this, she winked at Hua Jin. "What should we do?" She mouthed to Hua Jin. "Are we going?" Hua Jin wanted to go, but... Chapter 3875. While Hua Jin was still hesitating, Yun Shishir said, "It's settled then. You're not allowed to stand me up. We haven't gotten together in a long time. You've been busy filming and haven't heard from us for a long time." Yun Shishir didn't allow any explanation and made her decision. Before Liang Yin could say anything, Yun Shishir had already made up her mind. Hua Jin quickly pointed at himself and mouthed, "Bring me along, bring me along." Liang Yin looked at him for a long time and finally understood what he was trying to say. He didn't speak for a long time. On the other end, Yun Shishir was a little puzzled. "Hua Jin, why aren't you saying anything?" Liang Yin quickly said, It's like this. Can I bring an assistant?" "Sure." "Male or female?" "Female." "Oh, all right then. If she doesn't mind, she can share a room with me." Liang Yin was a little stunned. Share a room with Yun Shishir? Hua Jin? While she was still hesitating, Yun Shishir said apologetically, "Because the room was already booked in advance. So there's no room left. Otherwise, she wouldn't mind sharing a bed with me." When Hua Jin heard this, he immediately waved his hand. He didn't mind. Why would he mind sharing a bed with Yun Shishir? When the call ended, Hua Jin still had a happy expression on his face. Liang Yin glanced at him and commented, "You're smiling so strangely now." "Who's Yun Shishir?" "My sister." "Your biological sister?" "Of course. I think it's better if you don't share a room." Hua Jin retorted self-righteously, "What else can I do? Do you want me to share a room with a man? What if I'm pounced on and eaten alive by someone who's plotting something against me? This is your body. I'm protecting you." Wow, that sounded so dignified. "Then I really have to thank you." Hua Jin snorted proudly, but in his heart, he was very excited. Originally, he didn't really like hot springs, but if he could share a room with Yun Shishir, he suddenly had a lot of expectations for the trip to the hot springs. Of course, he had absolutely no improper thoughts about Yun Shishir. However, it was still better than sharing a room with Wuxia. That was what Hua Jin thought. But on that day, when they gathered at the airport, Hua Jin never expected that the demon king Gong Jia would be there too. Come on. Yes. As soon as Gong Jia saw Hua Jin, he walked over and hugged him in front of everyone's astonished eyes. Gong Jia knew that Hua Jin and Liang Yin had swapped identities. However, Yun Shishir and Wuxia didn't know about such a ridiculous thing. Hence, in their eyes, Gong Jia was hugging Liang Yin's body. Yun Shishir was stunned. Shao Jia. You, why are you guys so intimate? Liang Yin was also stunned. She didn't know that after the soul swap, Hua Jin had mentioned this to Gong Jia, so she thought that Gong Jia didn't know about it. But what's with the intimacy they're showing? She didn't remember knowing this man. You're Liang Yin, right? Gong Jia smiled and asked Hua Jin, who are you sharing a room with tonight? Without waiting for Hua Jin to answer, Yun Shishir said, Shao Jia, do you know her? Yeah, I know her. Chapter 3876. Yun Shishir smiled as she walked over to show her friendliness. You don't mind sharing a room with me tonight, right? No, I mind. Gong Jia interrupted Hua Jin mercilessly and pulled him into his arms. Lowering his voice, he said word by word, if you dare to share a room with Shishir, do you believe that I'll break your legs? Hua Jin gulped. I believe you. Sharing a room with my sister, are you rebelling? Gong Jia's voice was as cold as ice. However, when he lifted his head to look at Yun Shishir, his eyes were gentle. Tonight, she's mine. Hiss. Everyone was dumbfounded. They were so shocked that their jaws almost fell off. Especially Liang Yin, she stared at Gong Jia in disbelief. Hua Jin was also frightened and wanted to break free from him. Hey, stop fooling around. It's not like we haven't slept together before, right? Gong Jia's smile was very meaningful. He acted as if he was very intimate with her. Liang Yin immediately walked over and pulled Hua Jin aside. She asked suspiciously, You've slept with him before? When did this happen? Don't listen to his nonsense. Hua Jin didn't know how to explain and said speechlessly, He actually knows about this matter between us. What matter? Well, he knows that I'm Hua Jin and that we've swapped bodies before. Huh. So, he doesn't want me to share a room with his sister, so he forced me to share a room with him. No way. Liang Yin insisted, you can't share a room. Hua Jin rolled his eyes. I don't want to either. You think I want to share a room with him? Gong Jia, the big devil. Who would want to share a room with the big devil? Liang Yin was a little restless. What should we do then? Why don't we leave? Before Hua Jin could answer, Yun Shishir walked over and sized them up. She asked curiously, What are you guys discussing? No. Nothing. Hua Jin asked tentatively, How are the rooms allocated tonight? There are 3 rooms in total. Originally, Lisa and I would share a room, Yu, Xiao Chen, and your brother-in-law would share a room, and Hua Jin and Shao Jia would share a room. However, Hua Jin said that he would have to bring you along. Since there are no more rooms, why don't you share a room with me to save the trouble? No. Gong Jia walked over and protested, You can't distribute it this way. He pulled Hua Jin to his side. He has to be in the same room as me. Everyone was silent. Wuxia couldn't take it anymore. How about this, I'll do it. In the end, Hua Jin, Gong Jia, and Wuxia would share a room, Liang Yin, Xiao Chen, and Yu would share a room, and Lisa and Yun Shishir would share a room. Hua Jin looked like he wanted to cry but had no tears. It can't be, right? Wouldn't it be too cramped for 3 people to share a room? There are only 3 rooms in total. After much discussion, Wuxia's suggestion was the most suitable. Thus, everyone compromised a little. Although Hua Jin felt wronged, he had no choice. Gong Jia and Mu Yaja would never agree to him sharing a room with Yun Shishir. Although Liang Yin was a girl, her body was that of a man, so she would be assigned to share a room with Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen. At the moment, this seemed to be the most humane solution. Chapter 3877. After discussing the allocation of the rooms, the group of them set off. Liang Yin was very happy to see the result of this distribution. After all, it was best to share a room with two adorable little lads. She wouldn't feel awkward or embarrassed. Most importantly, she would not feel burdened. Hua Jin said that although Gong Jia knew about this, he did not tell Yun Shishir for the time being. It was not because of any other reason, but because he was worried that she would be worried for nothing and would not be able to accept this fact. However, since Gong Jia knew about this, Yu Yu would naturally know about this too. Yun Shishir had already booked the plane tickets. After everyone had boarded the plane, Yu Yu, who was originally sitting with Lisa, swapped seats with Lisa and sat next to him. Yu Yu looked at him with an unfathomable gaze. Hua Jin shuddered when he saw Yu Yu staring at him. He glanced at him and raised his eyebrows. He did not know why Yu Yu was looking at him with such a deep gaze. "Why are you staring at me like that?" "I'm thinking." Yu Yu looked at him from head to toe and smiled evilly. "Do you feel uncomfortable when a man turns into a woman? Do you feel that your chest is heavy? No, then, do you pee like a girl now? If not? That's amazing." Yu Yu blinked his beautiful eyes and suddenly smiled, as if he was hiding an unknown ambition. "I really want to dissect you." After all, this was the first time he had heard of something as magical as soul exchange. Of course, Yu Yu knew that Hua Jin would not joke or lie. Hua Jin trembled. He was frightened by black-bellied Yu. He had said that he would dissect Yu Yu so casually. He was scared to death. Hua Jin gulped. "You can't joke about this. Since you know that it's a joke, why are you so nervous?" On the other hand, Liang Yin got along well with Mu Yichen. She was a very distressed person, and the flight on the plane was rather boring. All electronic devices were banned, so Mu Yichen was also bored. Liang Yin chatted with him on and off, which alleviated a lot of the boredom. When they arrived at the Mid-Mountain Hotel, it was already afternoon. The luggage was directly carried back to the room by the bellman. Half Mountain Hot Spring, the so-called Half Mountain, meant that the hotel was located in the middle of the mountain, and the hot spring pool was at the waist of the mountain. While soaking in the hot spring and lying on the side of the pool, one could overlook the entire mountain scenery. Especially at dusk, when the sun was setting, there was nothing more enjoyable than soaking in the hot spring while watching the sunset. Before coming here, Liang Yin's concept of hot springs was just like what she saw in TV dramas. It was like the bathtubs in many bathhouses, with steam rising in spirals. She had no interest in hot springs. However, when she arrived at the hotel and looked at the endless mountain road and the mountain scenery, she was stunned by the beautiful scenery in front of her. Liang Yin smiled and said, "Why do I feel that staying in this hotel makes me feel isolated from the rest of the world?" When Yun Shishir heard this, she immediately said, "You usually have a hard time filming. Treat this trip as a vacation to relax." "Oh," Liang Yin touched her nose a little embarrassedly. Yun Shishir did not know about this and thought that she was Hua Jin. Chapter 3878. After all, she would never have been able to afford such an expensive hotel in the past. She heard that a room in this hotel cost more than 10,000 yuan per night. It was too expensive, it was terrifyingly expensive. Compared to her carefree attitude, Hua Jin was a little absent-minded. The thought of sharing a room with Gong Jia gave him a headache. It was said that the room was a suite with 2 rooms, 2 bathrooms, and 1 living room. Then, who would sleep on the same bed as whom? If Gong Jia shared a bed with him, could he reject him? Hua Jin had 2 worries about sharing a bed with Gong Jia. One was that he was worried that Gong Jia would go berserk and skin him alive. The other was that he would say something wrong and Gong Jia would tear him apart in a fit of anger. No matter which it was, he didn't want to do it. He wanted to live for a few more years. He couldn't even sleep with him. He didn't want to sleep with a man. And a big devil at that. Hua Jin made a decision in his heart. No matter how Gong Jia and Mu Yaja were to be allocated, he would either have a room to himself or sleep on the sofa in the living room for the whole night. He would never share a bed with Gong Jia. What's wrong? Gong Jia walked to Hua Jin's side and suddenly interrupted his thoughts. What are you thinking about? Hua Jin was shocked. When he realized that it was Gong Jia, he didn't know when he had stood behind him. He asked carefully, how are we going to allocate the rooms tonight? You, who are you going to sleep with? Me and you. How about that? No, Hua Jin waved his hands and smiled awkwardly. This isn't good. After all, I'm a woman now. Men and women can't be separated. Oh. Men and women can't be separated? When Gong Jia heard this, he felt that it was quite interesting. He smiled wickedly, revealing the tip of his snow-white teeth. Coupled with the black diamond earrings on his ears, he looked like a demon at first glance. Standing behind him, Gong Jia leaned forward slightly and whispered into his ear with a playful smile, you seem to be used to being a woman now, don't you? Hua Jin wished he could knead Gong Jia into a ball. However, due to Gong Jia's intimidating aura, he was a coward. He admitted that he was a coward. He wouldn't argue with him. I'm a woman now. Oh, how does it feel to be a woman? It's all right. Other than when she was on her period, she was in so much pain that she wished she was dead. Hua Jin turned around uncomfortably, not daring to meet Gong Jia's eyes. Gong Jia casually circled in front of him again. Like an elegant cheetah on the grassland, he paced around his prey at a leisurely pace. He stopped in front of Hua Jin, bent down, and gently pinched his chin. Looking at his slightly flushed cheeks, he narrowed his eyes. I don't think there's anything wrong with you being a woman. Don't you think that you've become a little cute after becoming a woman? When he reacted, Hua Jin wrinkled his nose in embarrassment. Was this Gong Jia flirting with him? Hua Jin gritted his teeth and said unhappily, no matter what, we can't sleep on the same bed. Chapter 3879. His question made Hua Jin even more wary. He stared at Gong Jia warily and asked, will you? Could it be that this Gong Jia was so beastly that even though he knew he was a man, he would still press him down? When Gong Jia heard that, he was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he said mysteriously, that depends on whether I'm a normal man or not. Why did he hear a faint threat in Gong Jia's tone? No, it wasn't faint. It was a strong threat. Are you threatening me? Hua Jin narrowed his eyes and took half a step back warily. Threatening you with what? Do you think I need to threaten you when you're so weak now? Hua Jin felt so guilty that his eyes were darting around. When Gong Jia saw that his gaze was not on him, he pinched his face unhappily and forced him to face him. How do you think a man and a woman will react when they lie on the same bed? Beep, 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 the alarm in Hua Jin's head rang loudly. He stared at Gong Jia as if he was a lion, as if he was afraid that he would pounce on him in the next second. Seeing Hua Jin's vigilant look, Gong Jia felt that it was very interesting. Why? Did you just realize that you're in a dangerous situation? Gong Jia sized him up from head to toe. You're as skinny as a bean sprout. I feel that I can lift you up with just one finger. Humph. Who said that? Hua Jin took half a step back to avoid him. Keep a distance from me. Why? I feel a little uncomfortable standing next to you. Where are you uncomfortable? Gong Jia narrowed his eyes and asked meaningfully, don't tell me you think that I can't do anything to you if you keep avoiding me? Gong Jia slowly enunciated each word as he enjoyed the sight of the man's uneasy expression. If I really want to do anything to you, you won't be able to escape. Just as Hua Jin was shivering, Yun Shishir's voice sounded. Little Jia. Gong Jia and Hua Jin turned around. Yun Shishir walked over and saw the two of them standing face to face. Am I disturbing you? Hua Jin quickly waved his hands. No, no, Gong Jia put his arm around Hua Jin's shoulder and looked at Yun Shishir with a gentle smile. What's the matter? Let's go to the restaurant for dinner. Then, I'm going to the hot spring. Okay, you go first. We'll be right there. After Yun Shishir left, Hua Jin immediately pushed him away and brushed his shoulders in disdain. He didn't waste time talking to him and chased after Yun Shishir. Gong Jia curled his lips into a smile as he watched his fleeing figure. There wasn't anything special about dinner. It was just that it was a revolving restaurant on the mountainside, so the scenery was not bad. After dinner, Yun Shishir urged them to bring their swimsuits and agreed to meet at the hot spring. The hot spring was very big. There were a total of 10 hot springs in the hotel, and only the hot spring that Yun Shishir had booked had the best scenery and was in an exclusive location. The hot spring was a mixed bath. There was a very big pool and 2 very small pools on both sides. They were a red wine pool and a small fish pool. Gong Jia and Mu Yaja changed into their swimsuits and went to the hot spring first. When they entered the pool, they saw that Liang Yin had also changed. However, she was a little slow as she walked to the hot spring and covered her chest with her hands. Chapter 3880. For some reason, she felt like a pretty girl from a humble family. This was obviously a subconscious action of a woman when she saw the opposite sex. Although she knew that she was a man now, she was still not used to the fact that her upper body was bare. Hua Jin had so many swimming trunks, but Liang Yin bought a pair of boxer trunks that could cover more of her body. However, compared to Liang Yin, she was still considered lucky. The most awkward person was Hua Jin. His swimsuit was personally chosen by Liang Yin. He had never seen it before. What? Protect. Guard. Of. Swim. Clothes. Was this AF** King swimsuit? If it wasn't a swimsuit, he would have thought it was a diving suit. Did it have to be so tightly wrapped? His figure wasn't that good, so there was no need to cover it so tightly. In Liang Yin's words, she was worried that he would accidentally expose himself. What the F***ck was she worried about? She didn't have to choose such a tight one, did she? This was practically a diving suit. When Hua Jin changed into his swimsuit and walked out, Yun Shishir was sitting by the hot spring and drinking water. When she saw him wrapped up so tightly, she swallowed a mouthful of water and almost choked. Oh my god, Yun Shishir widened her eyes in shock. Liang Yin, you're not wearing a swimsuit, are you? Haha. Xiao Yichen burst out laughing and pointed at Hua Jin. We're here to soak in the hot spring, not to dive. Those who don't know would think that we're diving in the Maldives. Hua Jin cleared his throat awkwardly and walked into the hot spring gloomily. He found a corner and sat down. He had nowhere to vent his frustrations. It was so tight that it was uncomfortable to wear. It was stuffy and hot. Most importantly, the water in the hot spring was very hot. Coupled with such a tight swimsuit, it was like wearing a thick quilted jacket in a sauna. He felt like he was going crazy from the heat. Liang Yin was also a little annoyed. She also realized that the swimsuit she had chosen was too heavy, so heavy that it was a little exaggerated. She had never soaked in a hot spring before, so she didn't know that the water was so hot. When she was choosing a swimsuit, she also asked Hua Jin for his opinion. Hua Jin naturally allowed her to choose any swimsuit she wanted. Anyway, he would wear it anyway. In the end, this guy specifically chose the most conservative one. Was this on purpose to prank him? It was so thick that he could hardly breathe. Gong Jia pursed his lips and smiled. It was as if he was gloating. Hua Jin just sat there sullenly, obviously not in a good mood. No matter how enjoyable it was to soak in the hot spring, it was almost ruined by the swimsuit. Liang Yin walked over guiltily. I'm sorry. I don't know. That's how it is to soak in a hot spring. Do you feel hot? Why don't you ask the waiter if there are any swimsuits for sale here? You can change into one at the last minute. Tell me, why did you buy such a store? Hua Jin muttered unhappily, you don't have a good figure. Liang Yin's face immediately turned cold. She gritted her teeth and said, what did you say? Without waiting for Hua Jin to explain, she grabbed his head and pushed him into the water. Hua Jin jumped out of the water and glared at Liang Yin angrily. Yin Shishir said reproachfully, Hua Jin, how can you bully a girl like that? As she said this, she slid to Hua Jin's side and asked gently, Liang Yin, are you okay? Chapter 38-81. It's nothing. When Yin Shishir saw him smile, she was a little surprised. Her eyes widened slightly, and she immediately said to Liang Yin, Hua Jin is indeed your assistant. Even when he smiles, he looks a little like you. When Hua Jin heard this, he was slightly stunned. He actually found it a little hard to believe. Liang Yin also looked at Yin Shishir in surprise. She blinked in astonishment, unable to come back to her senses. Yin Shishir was completely unaware of the smiles between Hua Jin and Liang Yin. She purely felt that when Liang Yin smiled just now, it was extremely similar to how Hua Jin usually smiled at her. Hua Jin was extremely touched. He didn't expect that even though he had changed into a different appearance, she would still remember. Hua Jin suddenly remembered what Xiao Yichen had said to him back then. When I stand next to you, no matter who it is, even Daddy, if they don't look at our height, it'll be difficult to tell us apart at a glance. However, Mommy will be able to tell which one is you and which one is me. Isn't that a very magical thing? At that time, Hua Jin had been impressed by Yin Shishir's meticulous mind. However, he didn't expect that even if he wasn't Hua Jin, she would still be able to distinguish his shadow in another person. Hua Jin asked carefully, do I really look like Hua Jin when I smile? Yeah, very much. Yin Shishir glanced at Liang Yin and said with a chuckle, every time Hua Jin smiles at me, his eyes are squinted into slits, just like yours. As she said this, she swam back to the side of the pool. She rested her arms on the side of the pool and soaked in the bath comfortably. Hua Jin and Liang Yin looked at each other in bewilderment. Gong Jie glanced at Yin Shishir and then at Hua Jin. He felt a little depressed and jealous. Just now, Yin Shishir recognized Hua Jin at a glance. He didn't know if his own sister would be able to recognize his shadow from a smile if something like this happened to him. When Hua Jin was about to swim to Yin Shishir's side, Gong Jie immediately stretched out his arm and pulled him back to his side. Don't go. Hua Jin glared at Gong Jie angrily. Gong Jie, what do you want? Gong Jie lowered his voice and warned, you're not allowed to get within 1 meter of my sister. Why are you so overbearing? Hua Jin glanced at him and muttered angrily, you're just like a child. Gong Jie heard that and smiled devilishly. His expression was gentle but his voice was frighteningly cold. Why? Do you think I won't dare to hit you because you've become a woman? What else? You won't hit a woman, right? Do you think? Gong Jie suddenly got close to Hua Jin. Other than hitting, I don't have any other way to make you suffer so much that you wish you were dead? Gulp. Hua Jin gulped nervously and his eyes widened. Gong Jie looked at him coldly. He was originally annoyed, especially when he thought of the special treatment Hua Jin received from Yin Shishir. This made him extremely unhappy. However, he didn't know why, but the expression on Hua Jin's face was really interesting. His eyes were so big that when he widened his eyes, his expression looked dazed and timid. His dark eyes were filled with his enlarged reflection. He looked stupid, but at the same time, he felt that it was actually kind of cute. Gong Jie almost lost his cool. He turned his face away awkwardly. He actually felt that this guy would be kind of cute after becoming a woman. Chapter 38-82. Once he realized that he actually thought Hua Jin was cute, Gong Jie felt even more awkward. He vented his gloomy anger on Hua Jin. Why are you staring at me? Without another word, Gong Jie pressed down on Hua Jin's head again and drowned him in the pool. Gurgle gurgle, everyone heard the sound coming from the corner and was shocked. They all looked over and saw Hua Jin struggling a few times before his body went limp and he fainted in Gong Jie's arms. Ah! Yun Shishir swam over anxiously. Hua Jin, your assistant, she seems to have fainted. Hua Jin. Liang Yin shouted anxiously, but she subconsciously called out Hua Jin's name. Fortunately, the scene was chaotic and everyone's attention was focused on Hua Jin, so they did not realize that she had called out his name strangely. Hua Jin had fainted. When Gong Jia fished him out, he thought that he had drowned. The group of people were flustered and did not know what to do. Among them, Mu Yaja and Gong Jia were the only ones who knew how to perform first aid. Mu Yaja did not even think before he handed this difficult task to Gong Jia. Gong Jia did not think too much about it. He thought that Hua Jin had choked on water. He crossed his fingers and pressed on her chest, but there was no movement. Liang Yin bit her finger and watched as Gong Jia pressed his palm on Hua Jin's chest. But, that was her body. She was going crazy. How is it? Yun Shishir squatted beside Hua Jin. Seeing that he had no reaction, she said to Gong Jia worriedly, be careful. She's a girl and her bones are very fragile. Don't break her ribs. At the side, Liang Yin added, that's right, that's right. A girl's bones are very fragile. Be careful not to break her bones. Most importantly, this was her body. She was still useful. Gong Jia looked depressed. It doesn't look like you're drowning. Yun Shishir said angrily, little Jia, she's just a girl. How could you be so cruel to her? Even if it's a joke, you can't play like this. What if someone dies? I know what I'm doing. Just as the group of people were staring at each other in bewilderment, Yu, who was at the side, looked at Hua Jin, who was lying on the ground with a flushed face, and asked suspiciously, could it be that he fainted from the heat? Also, I remember that there is an infirmary in the hotel. Yu glanced at Gong Jia and said coldly, instead of glaring at him, why don't we send him to the infirmary? When Hua Jin woke up and opened his eyes, he saw a light hanging above his head. He suddenly realized that he was on a big bed. A familiar voice came from beside him. You're awake? Hua Jin turned his head in horror and stared at Gong Jia, who was guarding by the bed, in despair. Why was this guy still haunting him? When Gong Jia saw Hua Jin looking at him as if he had seen a ghost, his expression turned even uglier. If you don't want to wake up, I can let you sleep again. No need. Although Hua Jin was extremely afraid of Gong Jia, the demon king of sadism, on the surface, he was extremely cowardly. Why? Why am I here? He sat up with his hand on his head and asked carefully. The doctor said that you fainted because of a lack of oxygen in your brain and low blood pressure. You're wearing a swimsuit that looks like a diving suit. It's airtight and you fainted from the heat. Chapter 3883. Was there such a thing as heat sickness? Just when Hua Jin was in disbelief, he vaguely felt some changes in his body. Where was his swimsuit? He lifted the blanket and saw that he had been changed into a bathrobe. His expression was even more horrified. This should be something that Liang Yin changed for me? Or... No. Yun Shishir did not know that he had swapped bodies with Liang Yin. Then, without knowing, she would never allow Liang Yin, who had become Hua Jin, to touch her body. It must be Yun Shishir who changed it for him. As if he had guessed what Hua Jin was thinking, Gong Jia snorted coldly. Dream on. What do you mean? I changed it for you. Hua Jin covered his crotch. Why are you the one who changed it for me? If not, who do you want to change it for you? The only person who was of the same gender was Yun Shishir. However, how could Gong Jia allow Yun Shishir to serve Hua Jin? He had never enjoyed such treatment before. Hence, Gong Jia went against everyone's wishes and dragged Hua Jin back to the room. He took off his swimsuit and put on a bathrobe. Hua Jin thought hopelessly that Liang Yin must be hiding in a corner and crying in despair. Tomorrow, he must find him and bare his fangs. What a headache. Hua Jin was still a little wary. You just changed my clothes? Gong Jia narrowed his eyes and looked at him. Other than changing your clothes, you seem to be expecting something else. No, no, or do you think that other than changing my clothes, I want to do something else to you? Hua Jin did not dare to say it. In reality, if a man and a woman were to be alone together, it would be hard for a hot-blooded man to not have any evil thoughts when he saw the naked young girl, right? Especially a man like Gong Jia. Speaking of which, he didn't know why, but the words Xiao Yichen had said to him before suddenly floated into his mind. My uncle doesn't like men, right? I don't think he likes women. He doesn't seem to be interested in women. Hua Jin had some doubts. Could it be that this Gong Jia really doesn't like women? With that thought in mind, Hua Jin suddenly asked tentatively, Gong Jia responded with a hostile look. Young Master Gong. Young Master Gong. Let me ask you something. Hua Jin didn't know how to ask. After weighing his options, he finally asked, do you like women? Do you have that kind of physical reaction to women? Gong Jia's gaze became even more dangerous. Are you questioning my sexual orientation? I am not questioning your sexual orientation. I'm just discussing with you about this. What I mean is, if you have a reaction to women, why don't I sleep on the floor while you sleep on the bed? We can't possibly sleep in the same bed as a single man and a single woman, can we? What if you pounced on me? However, Hua Jin didn't dare to ask the second half of his sentence. Gong Jia heard this and revealed an extremely evil smile. He suddenly approached him. Hua Jin leaned against the headboard and stared at him nervously. Gong Jia's arms were on both sides of him. Through the slightly open collar of his bathrobe, his well-defined chest and the firm lines of his arms were clearly visible. His entire body was emitting sex-inducing hormones. Chapter 3884. Hua Jin was so stiff that he didn't dare to move an inch. It was as if he was facing a lion that was eyeing him covetously. If he moved, the lion would pounce on him in the next second. Save life. Gong Jia stared at his face and finally spoke. You're afraid that I'll take advantage of you? You're so concerned about my sexual orientation. Gong Jia's thin lips curled up slightly, making him look devilishly charming. Why don't I give it a try? He moved closer to him. Hua Jin almost shrieked out loud. Try what? Try to see if I have any reaction to women. Is there a need to try? Do you like men or women? Don't you know what you're doing? No. His gaze fell on Hua Jin's tightly clenched lips. Gong Jia smiled, revealing his snow-white teeth like a devil. It's rare for you to become a woman. You should at least experience what it's like to be a woman. Otherwise, you'll be wasting such a rare opportunity, okay? No. I don't want to. I don't want to experience this. Other people might not even have the chance to experience this. No. Believe me, 99% of straight men would never want such an opportunity. Is that so? Gong Jia had just raised his hand when Hua Jin nervously covered his shoulders as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He glared at him coldly and suddenly curled his lips in disdain. The next second, his large palm held onto his head and pushed his body to one side. The next second, Hua Jin was kicked to the ground. He got up from the ground in a daze, looking as if he had been frightened. He lifted his head to look at Gong Jia on the bed, only to see that he had already lifted the blanket and covered himself with it. Before he laid down, Gong Jia glanced at him casually and sneered. Nothing happened. You seem very disappointed. Hua Jin stared at Gong Jia in a daze as he lay down. He didn't dare to make a sound. Was the devil going to sleep? That's great. He was finally liberated. Hua Jin tiptoed to the door. When he turned around, he saw that Gong Jia's back was still as usual, as if he had really fallen asleep. Only then did he let his guard down. He opened the door, walked into the living room, and sat down on the sofa. Hua Jin finally felt a little more relaxed after being in a room away from the great demon king. Perhaps it was the relaxation after being overly nervous. All the muscles in his body suddenly relaxed. He slumped onto the sofa like water, but he still had lingering fears. This vacation was like a tribulation. When he thought about how he still had 3 days of vacation before he could return to the set, and how he would have to live under the same roof as Gong Jia for the next 3 days, he felt hopeless. God bless him. I hope that in the next 3 days, he will get along with Gong Jia peacefully. Amen. Forget it, let's sleep. After a day's journey, coupled with the incident at night, and being hit by Gong Jia, he was exhausted. The heater was on in the room, so he didn't feel cold. Hua Jin casually pulled a blanket and carefully covered his stomach before he fell asleep on the sofa. Chapter 3885. The next day, Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja brought the 2 little munchkins to the mountain early to pick tea leaves. The Mid-Mountain Hotel was located on Yuhuan Mountain, and on Yuhuan Mountain, there was a type of tea that grew on volcanic rocks called immortal tea. Legend had it that a long time ago, Lu Dongbin, immortal lady he and the other 8 immortals, after attending the Queen Mother's immortality peach banquet, toured the 4 seas to understand the mortal world. The immortals passed by Yuhuan Mountain and saw soldiers digging stones to build a city, so they said to the immortals, "It's very hard for them to dig stones to build a city, I'll go to the South Sea to borrow some stones to help them." Thus, they ignored the objections of the immortals and went directly to the South Sea to borrow stones. The next day, Dongfang Harbor was white, and a large group of geese left the beach and headed towards Immortal Mountain. Lu Dongbin waved the group of geese away, but found that these geese were all made by immortal lady he with stones to tease him, so he was so angry that he left on a cloud. Immortal lady he looked at the stones and felt bad, so she sprinkled Guanyin Bodhisattva's tea seeds on the stone peak in the mountain. The tea leaves grew with the wind, and not long after, there was volcanic tea on the stone peak. There was a filial son on the mountain. His mother was sick for a long time and couldn't recover, so he looked everywhere for medicine. One day, he saw a piece of tea on the mountain, so he picked the tea leaves for his mother to drink, and unexpectedly, she was much better the next day. After that, everyone regarded the tea leaves as immortal tea and drank it regardless of whether they were sick or not. Gradually, the villagers on the mountain developed the habit of drinking tea and became the famous village of longevity. Of course, this story could be fabricated, but the reputation of immortal tea was definitely not undeserved. The environment of the stone peak was unique, and the soil was rich in organic trace elements, among which, the content of sulfur and potassium was relatively high. The unique geographical and geological conditions, the superior ecological environment, and the excellent processing technology gave the volcano tea an outstanding quality. Actually, Yin Shishir didn't come this time out of sudden interest, but because Mu Yaja took a fancy to the hot spring resources and a large area of tea trees on the stone peak, so he wanted to invest and develop it into a tourist attraction, focusing on building a resort. This time, they came with the main purpose of inspection. Therefore, early in the morning, a group of people went to pick tea leaves. Liang Yin was especially interested. Although she didn't like drinking tea, she was interested in picking tea leaves. Mu Yaja also asked Gong Jia, but Gong Jia was wrapped in the quilt and did not say a word. Mu Yaja was too lazy to call him. When Hua Jin woke up, he found that he didn't know what had happened. He had actually rolled on the ground, and under his body was a furry carpet. He had fallen asleep and didn't even know that he had fallen off the sofa. Feeling that the room was empty, he carefully crept to the door of Mu Yaja's room, mistaking it for Gong Jia's room. When he opened the door, he saw that the bed was empty. Thinking that Gong Jia was gone, he jumped up in excitement. The great demon king has left. Just as he was cheering, a cold voice came from behind him. Who is the great demon king? Hua Jin froze for a moment and turned around in a daze, only to see Gong Jia with slightly messy hair and a gloomy face. Gong Jia glared at him with an unfriendly face. Hua Jin took half a step back and immediately adapted to the situation, revealing a standard peasant smile. Young master, you're awake? Get lost. Oh. Chapter 3886. He could tell that Gong Jia's temper when he woke up was quite scary. However, it didn't matter, he tolerated it. It was already late. Since Gong Jia was already up, he must be planning to go out, right? Then, he could enjoy a rare moment of peace and quiet. There was a huge sunroom in the suite. There was a circular jacuzzi in the sunroom, surrounded by privacy glass. One could see the scenery outside but not inside from the outside. When Gong Jia left, he could lie leisurely in the bathtub, sipping champagne while looking at the beautiful scenery of the mountains. It was simply great bliss. This was more like a vacation. Hua Jin could already imagine the different kind of bliss lying in the bathtub. However, his beautiful dream was shattered very quickly. Gong Jia made a call in the bathroom and found out that Wuxia and Xianxia had gone to the mountains to pick tea leaves. Hence, he decided to rest in the room. Then, he walked straight to the sunroom and lay down in the bathtub. He poured a glass of Italian champagne that Hua Jin had been coveting for a long time. Holding the wine glass, he stretched out in the bathtub and enjoyed life. Hua Jin looked on eagerly from the side. His surf bathtub, his premium Italian champagne, how could life be so unpredictable? Hua Jin lay on the sofa resentfully. Gong Jia's icy voice sounded again. Come here. He seemed to be summoning him. Hua Jin sat up from the sofa reluctantly. He looked at him a little gloomily and asked foolishly, What? Give me a shoulder massage. A shoulder massage? Yeah, my neck is sore. The needle here was soft. Gong Jia was used to hard needles, so when he changed to a softer needle, his neck felt like it was going to collapse. Hua Jin said reluctantly, Don't we have a massage technician? I'll give you a call and ask for service. Gong Jia snorted coldly. Hua Jin stood up immediately and walked behind him. He squatted down and swallowed his anger. I'll give you a massage. He pinched the back of Gong Jia's neck with both hands and gently massaged it. However, he was cursing in his heart. Didn't this guy want to enslave him? Fine. He tolerated it. Ostracized. It must be ostracized. This guy must be jealous of his close relationship with Xianxia, so he targeted him. Too gentle. When Hua Jin heard this, he increased the strength of his grip. Gong Jia asked, Is it because your hands are as soft as a woman's now that you're a woman? Hua Jin pinched him. However, to Gong Jia, such strength was neither too light nor too heavy. It was neither painful nor itchy. From Hua Jin's point of view, Gong Jia was leaning against the side of the pool. His naked upper body accentuated his well-defined muscles and protruding chest, which made him look even more sexy. For a moment, Hua Jin couldn't take his eyes off him. He was envious. How did he train his muscles? He used to have the habit of going to the gym. However, no matter how much he trained, he couldn't train his muscles to be as exquisite as Gong Jia's. Hua Jin asked curiously, How did you train your muscles? What? Do you go to the gym? I don't have the habit of going to the gym. Then how did you get your muscles? Why, do you want them? Hua Jin naturally felt envious. Chapter 3887. Hua Jin didn't say anything, but he felt envious. Hence, he kept staring at him. However, he suddenly realized that Gong Jia's deep gaze had landed on his side profile. He snorted and asked, What are you doing? Have you seen enough? I see that you've been staring at me. Gong Jia asked again, How long are you going to stare at me? Hua Jin turned his face away awkwardly, stood up and walked to one side. He said unhappily, Do you think I want to look? Even if you don't want to look, you've been staring at me for a long time. As he said that, Gong Jia stood up from the bathtub and wiped his body with a towel. Then, he put on a bathrobe and stepped out of the bathtub. Fine water droplets slid down his skin bit by bit. Gong Jia walked in front of him and looked at him fixedly. Hua Jin didn't know where to look and just stared at him blankly. You. Why are you staring at me? Gong Jia said this out of the blue, I realized that you're quite pretty. Boom. This sentence made Hua Jin's entire body stiffen. So much so that all the blood in his body flowed to the top of his head and his face was so red that it looked like blood was going to come out. Gong Jie saw that his face was even redder, and for a moment, he felt that it was more interesting. Standing in front of him was Liang Yin. Even though he knew that although it was a woman's body, the essence was still Hua Jin. However, he didn't know why, but he didn't feel that it was out of place at all. You've blended in well with this body. When Hua Jin heard this, he was stunned. What do you mean? After you've turned into a woman, you're really like that. As Gong Jie said this, he suddenly chuckled and walked closer to him. What's the experience of being a woman? Hua Jin looked awkward as he retreated, trying to avoid him. Gong Jie stretched out his arms and trapped him between his arms, blocking his escape route. Hua Jin shrunk his shoulders in vigilance, looking extremely vigilant. Gong Jie, is it fun to tease me? Tease? Gong Jie frowned and recalled, I remember someone seriously questioning my sexual orientation yesterday. Why don't I take this opportunity to prove to you what my sexual orientation is? Hua Jin was furious. Gong Jie, don't make such a joke. Before he could finish his words, Gong Jie suddenly grabbed his collar and pressed him down on the sofa. Before Hua Jin could accept the fact that he had been pushed down by a man, he heard his fragrant voice. I'm serious. Hua Jin's brain instantly crashed. He subconsciously clenched his fist and swung it at his face. However, with his current body, how could he be a match for Gong Jie? The latter raised his hand and easily caught his fist without any effort. He immediately tied his hands behind his back and subdued him. Hua Jin couldn't move anymore. In the next second, a warm sensation pressed down and covered his lips. However, it was only for a moment. After a brief touch, it immediately separated. When he came back to his senses, Gong Jie had actually kissed him. Hua Jin's eyes widened as if they were about to pop out. Chapter 3888. Ha! He laughed out loud. Hua Jin's reaction was too amusing. He couldn't help but laugh. He had intended to tease him. After all, this guy had questioned his sexual orientation yesterday. Then, he had to prove that he liked women and was a normal man. However, he didn't expect his reaction to be so cute. Previously, when they were playing games and receiving punishment, he had also kissed him indirectly. However, it was a little awkward facing a man's face at that time. Now that Hua Jin had become of a woman, however, this sense of repulsion vanished in an instant. Gong Jie. Hua Jin was so angry that he gritted his teeth and asked, Is it fun? Is it fun to bully people like this? Yeah, it doesn't feel bad. You. This lawless devil incarnate. Hua Jin pushed him away violently. He raised his hand and rubbed his mouth with the back of his hand. His mouth was very tender, like a flower petal. After he rubbed it, it turned red and swollen, as if it had been spicy. When Gong Jie saw this, he couldn't help but laugh again. However, because of this laugh, Hua Jin couldn't help but be stunned. It was rare for him to see Gong Jie laugh like this. He had to admit that when he laughed, he looked very good. He had a heroic spirit. Although he and Yun Shishir were twins, their facial features were very similar. However, his features were more heroic and devilish. It was a beauty that was between the sexes. He was very beautiful. When he laughed, there was a faint dimple at the corner of his lips. This dimple was too small. It wasn't easy to notice when he didn't smile normally. However, when he laughed, he couldn't hide it at all. If Gong Jie laughed like this often, it wouldn't be bad. If he didn't know this man well, he would definitely think that this smile was very sunny and warm. However, those who knew his character would shudder because of this smile. They always felt that when he smiled, even if he looked at the sun, there was always a hint of evil and sinister intent. Seeing him smile like this made his hair stand on end. Hua Jin turned his head awkwardly, stood up, walked to the door, and muttered, "Pervert." With that, he opened the door and walked out, slamming the door behind him. Gong Jie did not know where he got the courage to use these two words on him. However, he was tactful enough to run away as soon as he finished speaking. Gong Jie was too lazy to care about him. He lay down on the sofa, picked up the remote control on the coffee table, turned on the TV, and watched it. Outside the door, Huajin left the room, not knowing where to go. The hotel had a lobby and a tea pavilion that looked like a garden in the sky. He might as well sit there and pass the time. When Xianxia came back, he would look at the specific arrangements. Thus, he sat down and ordered a cup of tea. However, his guilty conscience did not calm down for a long time. Thinking back to that Gong Jia kiss just now, he felt uncomfortable in his heart. He felt that, as a man, he was actually being teased by another man. This feeling was not good at all. Xianxia came back after picking the tea leaves. When she passed by the tea pavilion, she saw Huajin sitting in the tea pavilion, holding his chin with both hands as he stared at the mountain scenery in a daze. Chapter 3889. She walked over and patted him lightly on the shoulder. Liang Yin. Huajin was in a daze. When he looked up and saw Xianxia, he smiled. Xianxia. Why are you sitting here alone? I didn't see you get up to pick tea with us in the morning. Oh, I was still sleeping in the morning. I didn't know that you went to pick tea. I see. Xianxia smiled. We bought tea cakes. Tea cakes? Yeah. Xianxia took out a tea cake from the box, broke off a small piece, and handed it to Huajin. Huajin looked at the tea cake in his hand and asked curiously, "What is this?" Before Xianxia could speak, Yu explained kindly, "This is a tea cake. Of course, it's edible." Yeah, really? Smell it. It smells good. I ate 2 tea cakes. When I bite into them, it's crispy and fragrant. But it's quite delicious. Yeah. Huajin immediately took a bite. In an instant, the fragrance of the tea filled his mouth. It was crispy and fragrant. When he bit into it, the tea leaves that had been dry and brittle immediately broke apart. The tea leaves and tea stems emitted a mesmerizing fragrance in his mouth. However, it was not easy to chew and was difficult to swallow. When Xiao Yichen saw this, he couldn't help but cover his mouth and burst out laughing. When he saw him laugh, Huajin was even more confused. What are you laughing at? He asked with a lisp as he chewed on the tea cake crumbs. Ha 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 ha. Xianxia couldn't help but laugh as well. Yu, who was beside them, revealed a sinister smile. This smile was exactly the same as Gong Jie's. There was an inexplicable evil aura. Huajin was so frightened that he quickly spat out the tea cake crumbs. He asked fearfully, "Is it poisonous?" "No, it's not." Xianxia held back her laughter and said, "This tea cake is not for eating. Yu is lying to you." Xiao Yichen held back his laughter until he was about to cry. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This tea cake is actually for making tea. Liang Yin stood at the side and asked quietly, "Don't you know that tea cakes are meant to be eaten? They're used to make tea." The corner of Huajin's lips twitched. He casually picked up the glass of water beside him and took a big gulp before spitting out the remaining dregs. A bitter taste instantly filled his mouth. He chewed the tea leaves were not only fragrant, but there was also an inexplicable bitterness. Fortunately, although the tea leaves and stems had been crushed into pancakes, they were still difficult to swallow, so he didn't swallow much. Why was this family so black-bellied? Whether it was Gong Jia, Muyajia, or Yu, other than Xianxia and Xiao Yichen, the other 3 were the epitome of being two-faced. Even though Xiao Yichen was sometimes naughty, compared to Yu, he was a little angel who was kind, and beautiful. Liang Yin took out something wrapped in paper from her bag. Huajin didn't know what it was, but he took it from her and opened it. It was persimmon. This is persimmon. It's definitely edible. Huajin took it skeptically. He didn't know why, but even though he knew that it was persimmon, he still felt skeptical. He took a bite and only swallowed it when he was sure that it was a persimmon. He hadn't eaten much since he woke up, so Huajin ate a few pieces of persimmon in one go. Liang Yin couldn't help but whisper, "Can't you eat less?" What if you gain weight? Chapter 3890. I don't know. I didn't have a big appetite in the past, so I didn't eat much. Hua Jin chuckled and replied in a low voice, Haha, you'll gain 3 pounds with every bite. You'll become a big fat boy by then. Yin Shishir said to Muyaja, I'm a little tired. I want to go back to my room first. Lisa is still waiting for me there. Oh, right. Why don't we? Hua Jin suddenly raised his hand and suggested, why don't I sleep in the same room as Lisa tonight? Liang Yin asked curiously, you want to change rooms? Yes. Hua Jin continued, if it doesn't work out, Lisa and Liang. Hua Jin and I will share a room. Sure, you and Chairman Mu will share a room. Yu, Xiao Yichen and Gong Jia will share a room. Isn't this a reasonable arrangement? Yin Shishir furrowed her brows and was a little conflicted. Lisa only wants to share a room with me, then, Hua Jin continued, Chairman Mu, it's good for you to share a room with Shishir. My room isn't a suite. There's only one bed. What about Xiao Yichen and Yu? We do have 2 beds, but Yu wants 1 bed each. But it'll be a little cramped if Daddy and I sleep together. Yu and Xiao Yichen's room was a standard children's room. The beds were 2-tiered bunk beds. If Muyaja slept there, she didn't know where to place her long legs that could break through the sky. Liang Yin and Xiao Yichen squeezed into the bottom bunk. Hua Jin was even more speechless. He was conflicted. He didn't want to share a room with Gong Jia. Although it was not the same bed, it was still uncomfortable to sleep on the sofa. However, he wanted to stay as far away as possible from that devil, Gong Jia. Muyaja asked, what's wrong? Are you uncomfortable sleeping on the sofa? Yin Shishir raised her eyebrows strangely. Hey, were you the one who slept on the sofa last night? Hua Jin nodded his head in grievance, almost wiping away his tears. Gong Jia bullied me. Didn't he say that he would let you sleep on his bed? Yin Shishir said righteously, wait here. I'll go talk to him. No need. Hua Jin quickly stopped her. If Gong Jia knew that he and Yin Shishir had secretly complained, he didn't know how he would punish him. I've thought about it. Actually, sleeping on the sofa is pretty good. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Anyway, the sofa is very big. I don't feel bad sleeping on it. It's pretty good. Although he was smiling on the surface, he was actually more depressed than eating Chinese gold thread. However, there was no other way. Hua Jin held the teacup in grievance and took a sip. Thinking about how he still had 3 days to face Gong Jia, he felt a headache coming on. In the evening, after dinner, the group of people went to the park to play. However, due to Gong Jia's verbal threats, Hua Jin didn't dare to go. He stayed in the hotel alone and took a hot bath. After soaking for a while, he changed into a bathrobe and lay on the sofa lazily to watch TV. Without Gong Jia around, it felt quite peaceful. At least, he could enjoy such a peaceful moment alone. He also felt very comfortable. As it was a luxury suite, the hotel sent a candlelit dinner, fresh fruits, and delicious desserts. He leisurely enjoyed the dinner alone and lay down on the sofa with the blanket covering him. As he ate desserts and watched TV, he actually felt a little sleepy. Chapter 3891. When Gong Jia and Muyaja returned to the room, Hua Jin had already fallen asleep on the sofa. Gong Jia walked over and saw that Hua Jin was sleeping very quietly. He didn't know what possessed him, but he stood by the sofa and stared at him for a while. When he realized that he had been staring at him for a long time, he furrowed his eyebrows and frowned unhappily. He didn't know if it was out of anger or something else, but he kicked Hua Jin mercilessly. This kick landed directly on someone's buttocks. Someone quivered and sat up on the sofa in shock. He screamed, "Ah! Fire!" Gong Jia's face darkened instantly. Fire? What military intelligence did he lie about? When Hua Jin finally snapped out of his trance and realized that he was dreaming, he raised his head and saw Gong Jia's impatient expression. He did not know how he woke up, but he vaguely felt a pain in his buttocks, as if they were cramping. What happened? He mumbled and rubbed his buttocks gently. When he looked at Gong Jia, he immediately sat up straight. You are back. He didn't know why, but at first glance, he actually looked like a wife who was waiting for her husband to return. This knowledge made him even more displeased. Gong Jia snorted coldly. Fire? Where's the fire? Hua Jin licked his lips and laughed. You must be dreaming. It should be sleep talking. In fact, when he woke up, he couldn't remember what he was dreaming about. He only felt that he seemed to have jumped down from a very high rooftop and was kicked down by someone. The building behind him was on fire. He was so frightened that he woke up screaming. In the end, he realized that it was a dream. Hua Jin didn't know that he was kicked awake by Gong Jia. Gong Jia glanced at him and his tone was very dangerous. Did you complain to my sister? Hua Jin felt guilty for a moment and immediately said, No. Gong Jia expressed his doubts. Then why else would she lecture me today, telling you to sleep on the sofa? Yun Shishir accused him of not being a gentleman. He actually let a girl lie on the sofa. It was too much. I didn't say anything. The more Hua Jin spoke, the softer his voice became. It was obvious that he was feeling guilty. Gong Jia asked coldly, if you didn't say it, then who did? The two of them looked back at Mu Yaja tacitly. Mu Yaja casually poured himself a glass of milk. He noticed the two pairs of strange gazes behind him, but he could not be bothered with them. Like an old cadre, he shuffled back to his room in his slippers. Hua Jin shrank back a little. It's okay. I don't think you're ungentlemanly. When people feel guilty, they act like you. Gong Jia said with a deep smile, It's okay, you can sleep on the bed today. Hua Jin was puzzled. Since when did Gong Jia become so reasonable? He felt that it was not normal for him to be so kind. He didn't seem to be so considerate. Hua Jin asked, If I'm sleeping on the bed, where are you sleeping? I'll sleep beside you. Hua Jin was glad that he didn't drink any water. Otherwise, he would have spat it out or choked on it. No need. Chapter 3892. You like to sleep on the sofa so much? Yeah. Hua Jin nodded vigorously. I love the sofa. Gong Jia was speechless. He looked at him carefully and suddenly asked, Why? Why are you so afraid? Gong Jia snorted coldly. Don't worry, I'm not interested in you. Just don't sneak up on me. Who would sneak up on you? Hua Jin said again, I don't like to sleep with men. Oh. Gong Jia said coldly, Don't tell me you like men. Hua Jin should be glad that he didn't drink water. Otherwise, he would have choked to death from the shock. Who likes men? You. Gong Jia said, I think you look very gay. Also, I heard a lot of rumors saying that you like men and not women. Who said that? Entertainment magazines. I couldn't tell, Hua Jin said mockingly, Young Master Gong, you're so busy every day. How could you be so bored as to buy entertainment magazines to read? On the plane. Gong Jia said, Since you don't like men, why are you so guilty? Hua Jin snorted coldly to express his disdain. Even if I like men, I'll never like someone like you. Oh, what kind of person am I? Domineering, perverted. Hua Jin was about to say the word pervert when he saw Gong Jia's face. He was so frightened that he swallowed his words. Gong Jia looked at him coldly. His thin lips suddenly curled up. He suddenly bent down slightly and gently approached Hua Jin. Seeing that he suddenly leaned over, Hua Jin quickly leaned back, wishing that he could keep a distance from him. However, he was getting closer and closer, so much so that the warm breath from his lips blew onto the tip of his nose. His breath seemed to have a special kind of high temperature, which instantly made his face red. Hua Jin's face was burning hot, but he didn't know it. Gong Jia saw that his face was strangely red, and felt that it was interesting. Why is your face so red? Could it be that she's shy? Why are you so close to me? I realized that I don't hate you that much anymore. At least now that you're a woman, I don't hate you at all. As Gong Jie spoke, he unscrupulously admired Hua Jin's burning face. He straightened up and said, it seems that you really like men. Who said that? Hua Jin couldn't wait to prove it to him. He suddenly stood up, picked up the quilt on the sofa, and angrily walked into the room. If I want to sleep on the bed, I'll sleep on the bed. Since someone is inviting me to sleep on the bed, is there a reason for me not to sleep? Gong Jie calmly turned around and watched him enter the room. He raised his eyebrows slightly but didn't say anything. Instead, he walked directly into the bathroom. Hua Jin carried the quilt into the room and lay on the bed. He wrapped his body tightly with the quilt. After a while, he heard the sound of water splashing from the bathroom. It was obvious that Gong Jie was taking a shower. He felt that something was wrong with this situation. It was just like when a couple was in a hotel. Damn it, why did he think in this direction? Moreover, why was he wrapped so tightly? It was as if he was guarding against something. Wasn't it normal for two men to sleep on the same bed? Chapter 3893. He looked like a shy little wife who was waiting for her new husband. How could one not misunderstand? He was obviously a man. Although his body was that of a woman, Gong Jie was a straight man who was as straight as steel. He would not do anything to him, right? Of course, he had the body of a devil, but he felt that he was a very principled guy. He would not do such a thing, Hua Jin comforted himself as he carefully lifted the blanket. But, he really wanted to take off his bra and sleep. It would be quite uncomfortable to sleep wearing this thing. But if he did not wear it, it would inevitably be a little exposed, right? But if he wore it, it would be very uncomfortable. One night, when he did not take it off to sleep, he dreamed that he was kidnapped. He was tied to a chair and could not move. He felt like he was suffocating. Forget it. He did not believe that Gong Jie would do anything to him. Hua Jin comforted himself as he stood up and got out of bed. He casually lifted half of the bathrobe and reached in with one hand to take off the bra. The bra was taken off from the side, so it was more convenient. However, while he was still struggling with the buttons, the bathroom door opened. Hua Jin was shocked and turned around immediately. He saw Gong Jie standing at the door, wiping his wet hair. However, when his gaze fell on the person who was taking off the bra, his gaze froze. Gong Jie was also stunned. He originally thought that Hua Jin was lying on the bed, probably covering himself tightly as if he was guarding against a thief. He did not expect that he was actually taking off. Gong Jie raised his eyebrows. He, on the other hand, was a little wary. Could it be that this guy really liked men? So, from the beginning to the end, he was playing hard to get? With this thought, Gong Jie could not help but reevaluate a certain someone. She recalled the time when they used to play punishment games. Whenever they were separated by a piece of tissue, Hua Jin's face would turn red as if he was shy. A normal man would be annoyed by that. Why would he show such a shy expression? Could it be? Gong Jie narrowed his eyes in horror at the thought. Are you that impatient? When Hua Jin heard this, he immediately pulled his clothes together and looked at him warily. Why didn't you say anything when you came out? Also, what do you mean by can't wait? Since you're not impatient, why are you taking off your clothes? Hua Jin felt that he was at a loss for words. What? Did I see through you? Gong Jie snorted, disgusting. You're the disgusting one. Hua Jin was completely enraged. I like women. Do you think I'm like you, someone who doesn't like men or women? Gong Jie gracefully sat down on the bed, tilted his head and looked at him, but let out a disdainful sneer. Not just any woman can catch my eye. If being picky was a sin, then he would rather commit an unforgivable sin than find a woman casually. Hearing his disdainful tone, Hua Jin suddenly laughed mischievously. Don't tell me that young Master Gong is still a little chunky. You seem to care a lot about whether I'm a chunky or not. Gong Jie's words were always able to force Hua Jin into a dead end. Hua Jin did not want to bother with him anymore. He walked to the bed and made a dividing line in the middle with a blanket, dividing the bed into two. Chapter 3894. What's this? Demarcation line. Hua Jin said confidently. We'll sleep on opposite sides. No one can cross the line. It was like a primary school student drawing a line to demarcate their territory. After Hua Jin finished speaking, he did not look at Gong Jie. He wrapped himself in the quilt like a dumpling and lay down. Gong Jie looked at him silently and lay down as well. He looked at his phone for a while. During the vacation, he had been receiving emails through his phone. For a long time, he had been in charge of the Hurricane Group's affairs. Ever since Yu returned to the Mu family, Gong Xiaoying was nowhere to be found. He was not at the headquarters, nor was he at the Gong family. He did not mention to anyone where he went. He only sent him occasional emails to remind him of some things. Regarding Yun Shishir and Yu, neither father nor son broke the silence first. Gong Jie did not know how to bring it up. He had mixed feelings. Gong Xiaoying obviously wanted to avoid it. When he learned that Yu and Lisa had returned to the Mu family safely, he did not ask anymore. Obviously, he was avoiding it. Yun Shishir and Gong Jie had mentioned that they wanted to negotiate seriously with Gong Xiaoying. Rather than a negotiation, it was more like a complete breakdown of their father-daughter relationship. They wanted to cut off their relationship cleanly. Gong Xiaoying also knew that Yun Shishir wanted to cut off their father-daughter relationship. It was as if she was running away. After that, she disappeared without a trace. If it were not for the occasional emails, Gong Jie would have been worried that Gong Xiaoying had met with an accident. Gong Xiaoying was not around, so Gong Jie had the final say in the Gong family's affairs. The matter about the Wurt region was temporarily put on hold. The Daoist plan was also put on hold for a long time because of Yu. However, Gong Jie was not in a hurry to start the plan again. He enjoyed such peaceful days. In the past, he was busy with business and expanding the territory of the Hurricane Group. Now, perhaps Yun Shishir had given him the warmth of a family, so he could not bear to break it. Therefore, whenever he was free, he would go back to the country. Yun Shishir even laughed at him for not doing his job. Recently, the Hurricane Group was not peaceful. No one knew where Gong Xiaoying went. Some of the relatives thought that Gong Xiaoying had met with an accident, but the Gong family had been hiding it. Therefore, they guessed that Gong Jie wanted to take power, so they deliberately hid Gong's whereabouts and the situation. Gong Jie, however, was dismissive. Of course, it wasn't that he wasn't ambitious. He had thought about the Gong family before. He wanted to obtain the highest authority in the Gong family, but he didn't want to use such despicable methods. In terms of ability and means, he would not lose to anyone. There were no emails in his mailbox. Gong Jie felt sleepy and put down his phone. Just as he was about to turn off the lights, he heard a light snoring sound from under the blanket beside him. He turned his head and looked at the bulging blanket. He could vaguely see Hua Jin's curled-up sleeping figure. The heater was on in the room. He was still wrapped in the blanket, but he did not feel stuffy. Gong Jie lifted the blanket curiously and saw Hua Jin's sleeping face. Chapter 3895. Gong Jie couldn't help but reach out his hand, trying to tuck Tang Yu's hair behind his ear. But when his fingertips touched Tang Yu's cheek, he immediately retracted his hand as if he had been electrocuted. The next day, when Hua Jin woke up in a daze, he felt a chill on his body. He looked up and found that his quilt had slipped to the ground. But fortunately, the bathrobe was still there. Hua Jin sat up. He didn't know how the quilt fell to the ground. Maybe it was because it was too hot, so he kicked the quilt to the ground in the middle of the night. He turned around and saw that Gong Jie was still asleep. But when he faced him, Hua Jin could easily see Gong Jie's thick eyelashes. Dense and dark. No wonder he gave off a particularly evil feeling. With such dense eyelashes, at a glance, It looked like he was wearing heavy eyeliner. Tang Yu unconsciously stared at him for a long time. It wasn't until his phone suddenly rang that he reacted. He felt a little guilty and flustered, as if he had done something he shouldn't have. When he braced himself and picked up the phone, Qin Zhou's cold voice came through. "Are you still on vacation?" "Ah. I'm still here. In 3 days, I'll return to the set. We're preparing to release a statement to fight back." Hua Jin was quite excited when he heard this. "Have you got all the evidence on Tang Yu?" "Almost. Now Tang Yu has the upper hand." "Upper hand?" "Yes. But you should know that the higher you stand, the more painful it is to fall." "Understood." After hanging up the phone, Hua Jin walked to the balcony, sat up on the deck chair, and began to read the news. In the past few days, the team behind Tang Yu had been hyping up on the internet. They bombarded Hua Jin on the internet, listing the 5 deadly sins of Hua Jin. 1. Messy personal life. They didn't know where they dug up old news about Hua Jin and Lin Shuya. They even found news about Hua Jin being a kept man. Other than his ambiguous relationship with his fans while filming, they also pointed to the female fan's suicide incident. They twisted the truth and said that this fan was Hua Jin's secret lover and that she was pregnant with Hua Jin's child. If it weren't for Hua Jin's assistant driving her away coldly, the female fan wouldn't have jumped off the building in despair. 2. The production crew is acting like a big shot. In the past, when Hua Jin was in the crew, it was common for him to act like a big shot. He even bullied the crew members. 3. Bully newbies. Tang Yu's team spread rumors. When Tang Yu was in the crew, Hua Jin often used his identity as the male lead to humiliate Tang Yu. He didn't put Tang Yu, his agent, and his assistant in his eyes. He even slapped Tang Yu in front of his assistant. Tang Yu's assistant even complained on Weibo that Hua Jin was too much and slapped Tang Yu 3 times in front of his assistant. 4. Hua Jin's acting skills are bad. Tang Yu's team touted Tang Yu's acting skills while criticizing Hua Jin's. They even accused him of being the most popular costume actor in the entertainment industry for not honing his acting skills by relying on his delicate and pretty face to earn the highest salary in the production team despite his lousy acting skills. 5. The quality of his fans is bad. Hua Jin's fans impeached Tang Yu on the internet, accusing him of using Hua Jin's fame to create hype. They even insulted Tang Yu on Weibo. Chapter 3896. During this time, Hua Jin didn't look at the news on the internet. Because Qin Zhou told him not to look, Hua Jin didn't look at it to avoid messing up his mood. As a result, Hua Jin almost exploded when he saw it. What was this? Was Tang Yu looking for death? How dare he do this to him? Endure, he endured. When he returned to Beijing, he would confront Tang Yu. On the bed, Gong Jia opened his eyes. He had woken up. He turned around and glanced at Hua Jin's angry back on the balcony. He furrowed his brows, turned over and went back to sleep. 2 days later, Hua Jin and Liang Yin returned to the set early. Qin Zhou was already waiting for them at the set and explained everything to them. At first, Liang Yin found it hard to accept. She didn't expect Tang Yu to be so excessive. He indiscriminately pushed the blame to Hua Jin and even smeared Hua Jin's reputation. Qin Zhou sneered, if Tang Yu could face his mistakes and admit that he was the one who caused this, it wouldn't be a big deal. But look at his behavior. He actually dared to go against Huan Yu. He's looking for death. Hua Jin also said hatefully, this Tang Yu, he just debuted not long ago. How can he be so ruthless? Yes. Do you know who's behind Tang Yu? Who? Huan Yu's rival, Senhai Entertainment. Senhai? 10 years ago, Senhai Entertainment mainly focused on the music industry. They signed many singers. Many singers and groups that were popular all over Asia were artists under Senhai Entertainment. However, they hadn't sung for a long time. The music industry ushered in the impact of the digital era. The market was in a slump, and the music sales plummeted. And in the era of pan-entertainment, singing alone couldn't attract much popularity. Even the popular idol singer was a triple agent. He acted in movies, TV dramas, and sang the theme songs of movies and TV dramas. That was the only way to stabilize his fans and popularity. As for professional singers, if they didn't have powerful resources, they wouldn't be able to establish themselves in the entertainment industry. As a result, Sun Hai made a strategic change and shifted his focus from the record company to the film industry. He invested in several films and dramas, but in the face of Huan Yu's suppression and domination, he was powerless to compete with Huan Yu. Huan Yu began to build up Hua Jin. Under Qin Zhou's suggestion, they supported Hua Jin. Therefore, Sun Hai also signed a group of fresh meat, including the newly signed Tang Yu. Tang Yu's appearance was the best among Sun Hai's new recruits. Therefore, Sun Hai put a lot of effort into promoting him. However, since she had stepped into the entertainment industry, she naturally could not escape the unspoken rules if she wanted to climb up the social ladder. No matter how good one's aptitude was, if there were no resources, then the unspoken rules would be unavoidable. Qin Zhou had already gotten hold of a batch of Tang Yu's black material. He was just waiting for the critical moment to release it. The PR team had already concocted a batch of press releases, waiting for Tang Yu's team to get carried away. Qin Zhou and Hua Jin communicated for a long time and taught Liang Yin how to cooperate. The next day, the show officially started. Chapter 3897. On the same day, Hua Jin saw the news from Huan Yu's media account. Only then did he know that Qin Zhou had instructed several reporters to take a few photos of Tang Yu and his fans entering and leaving the hotel room together. And they didn't leave the hotel for 2 nights. Although it was secretly taken, the photos were very clear. With clear facial features, it was easy to recognize that the man in the photo was Tang Yu himself. In the photo, 2 people were circled in red. After zooming in, even if the pixels were limited, the other girl was actually the girl who jumped off the building that day. Previously, because Sun Hai exposed that the girl and Hua Jin had an affair, the child in her belly was Hua Jin's child. So, unscrupulous media sneaked into the morgue and secretly took photos of the girl's face. Although it didn't take long for the internet police to withdraw the photos had already spread widely on the internet. Some netizens even found the girl's photos through human search. Therefore, through this photo, the public recognized at a glance that the girl who entered and left the hotel with Tang Yu was the girl who jumped off the building that day. Everyone believed that the girl and Hua Jin had a relationship. But in the end, the thief cried thief. The real person who slept with the fans was actually Tang Yu. Before that, Tang Yu's team had righteously accused Hua Jin of having a messy private life with several girls. Many of Tang Yu's fans were eager to protect their master, and went after Hua Jin fiercely. Many of Hua Jin's fans also lost their will and defected to Tang Yu's side. Together with Tang Yu's fans, they discredited Hua Jin. Perhaps because of the depth of love, many of Hua Jin's fans couldn't believe it. At first, they still defended their idol on the internet. But as time passed, Hua Jin didn't show up to express his position from beginning to end, nor did he refute the rumors. The public took it for granted that Hua Jin was too guilty and didn't dare to admit it. Therefore, he wanted to deal with it coldly. The fans were suffering as they waited. Many of them stopped being fans, thinking that they loved the wrong idol. However, there were still a large number of fans who firmly believed that Hua Jin did not do such an immoral thing. Now, Huan Yu had publicly clarified that the previous period of silence was because they were secretly gathering evidence. When the evidence was conclusive, they would announce it all together. Who knew how many haters would be slapped in the face? This was also one of Qin Zhou's strategies. Through this matter, he could stabilize his fan base. Previously, the loyal fans would firmly defend Hua Jin. Through this incident, the fans' trust in Hua Jin was further strengthened, and a group of fans who weren't loyal enough were eliminated. At the same time, it created a tolerant and steady side of Hua Jin. As for those fans who left because of distrust, they would feel guilty towards their idol and become even more loyal to Hua Jin. One had to admit that Qin Zhou's methods were brilliant. After fiercely attacking this rumor, the other accusations would collapse on their own even without Huan Yu showing up. When a person told a lot of lies, even if they were half true and half false, then when that person's lies were ruthlessly attacked, the other words that were said, even if some of them were true, would no longer be believed. If one sentence was false, no matter how true the other words were, no one would believe it. Chapter 3898. Tang Yu's manager was furious. Where did these sneaky photos come from? How did Huan Yu get hold of these photos? Even Tang Yu himself didn't expect that he would be secretly photographed by the reporters when he brought his fans into the hotel. He thought that since he wasn't famous, the paparazzi wouldn't bother to wait for him, so he was fearless. In fact, this was Qin Zhou's doing. Ever since Hua Jin joined the cast, Qin Zhou had sent several reporters to pretend to be Hua Jin's assistant and makeup artist. In fact, they were reporters who secretly took photos of many of the artists in the cast. However, he had been holding it in his hands all this time and didn't expose it. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. Qin Zhou had always believed in the truth of protecting himself and never took the initiative to cause trouble. After all, it was easy for artists to survive in this industry. He was rarely willing to provoke others. But if others came to offend him, then he might not be polite. It was obvious that Tang Yu's team wanted to kill Hua Jin. So, he didn't have to be merciful. He had a lot of dirt on Tang Yu in his hands, and the more explosive ones were yet to come. Qin Zhou's principle was to either not say anything, or if he did, it would be a fatal blow. He wouldn't give Tang Yu's team any chance to fight back. And he did it. As soon as this news came out, Tang Yu's team was completely flustered. It could be said that they were caught off guard. Tang Yu's Weibo was very lively 2 days ago. When Tang Yu's team was smearing Hua Jin's reputation, Tang Yu posted a photo on Weibo with a short sentence, "Justice is in the hearts of the people." It seemed that there was no response, but in fact, it was a response. It was as if they were the weak ones and didn't dare to say anything because of Hua Jin's power and means. The fans were heartbroken for a while. But now, when the time came out, he really slept with his fans, got them pregnant, and was heartless. He drove his fans out of the hotel and didn't even want to pay for the abortion. His image as a scumbag was suddenly known to everyone. Qin Zhou didn't know how he found the person. A hotel cleaner stood up and said that she saw the girl before she jumped off the building. The girl came to the hotel to find out that she was pregnant and came to discuss with Tang Yu about what to do. She happened to pass by and saw this scene. She immediately hid, but she accidentally heard Tang Yu's disapproving tone. Obviously, he didn't believe that the girl was really pregnant. He thought that the girl was here to threaten and blackmail him. Therefore, he refused to let her in and coldly drove her away. The girl was extremely sad. She said that she had no home to return to. In order to chase after idols, she had been isolated from her family. Now that she was pregnant, she was at the end of her rope. However, Tang Yu clearly said that he was on the rise now. His image was very important. He would never allow her to be his stumbling block. The girl was so sad that she was utterly defeated. She stumbled and left. Some reporters questioned her and suspected that the cleaner had been bribed. However, the cleaner was very magnanimous. She even said that what she said was the truth and that she was willing to bear all the legal responsibilities. Therefore, with this sentence, Tang Yu's so-called lawyer's letter seemed weak and feeble. All the onlookers encouraged Tang Yu to sue the cleaner if what she said wasn't true, and if it was a smear or a rumor. Chapter 3899. This time, Tang Yu's face was beaten black and blue by Huan Yu's solid hammering one after another. Tang Yu's manager cursed Qin Zhou. This Qin Zhou was young, in his early 30s, but his methods were impressive. He had already laid out a backup plan. How could Tang Yu know that Qin Zhou had already sent people to watch him from the first day he joined the crew? Photos after photos were placed in front of him. He wanted to clear his name, but he couldn't. And Hua Jin's Weibo was personally managed by Qin Zhou. Of course, in this segment, Hua Jin had to act as a victim. For example, because of this incident, in the face of public opinion crisis, He endured the grievances and kept silent. Until the truth came out, the fans felt even more sorry for Hua Jin's grievances. Since there were facts and evidence to prove that the girl who jumped off the building had nothing to do with Hua Jin. Then, in the video that was released that day, Hua Jin was talking to the girl, and even showing concern. For a moment, Hua Jin's kind image was solidified. What a celebrity in the entertainment industry needed the most was positive energy. Just when Tang Yu was still thinking about this matter and racking his brains on how to get through this public relations crisis, Huan Yu once again released negative information about Tang Yu. On Weibo, an internet celebrity with the ID of Lily stood up as Tang Yu's ex-girlfriend, and detailed several of Tang Yu's crimes. A long and voluminous post of a few thousand words, tearfully accused Tang Yu of being a scumbag. Before Tang Yu debuted, he was an internet celebrity in his blog shop. If you've read the original, Demon Eyes, you'll know that Tang Yu and I were the book models for Demon Eyes. He was the male lead, and I was the female lead. We met during the Demon Eyes series of illustrations. At that time, he was still a university student, and I was already a famous cosplayer on the internet. At that time, he was very young and immature, but on the surface, he was a sunny and handsome guy. Just like that, we fell in love. Furthermore, when he was still in university, we opened an online clothing store together. We became models together and ran the store together. When he graduated from university, he told me that he wanted to be a celebrity, so he went for an interview with a record company. However, his voice wasn't very good, but the record company thought highly of him. They released a few demos, but they weren't very popular. After all, the entertainment industry was very cruel. If you didn't have the ability, it didn't matter how good-looking you were. So, he said that he wanted to act. I've always supported his dream of becoming a star, so I've invested all the income of the online store into him, packaging, and managing all the connections while maintaining the store's operations. Actually, I was in a lot of pain during that period. I feel that if he becomes a celebrity, we might not be able to be together in the future. So, I advised him to stop being a celebrity and just be an ordinary person. Get married, have children, and live a peaceful life. Perhaps that's true happiness. Chapter 3900. I secretly opened it once, and it turned out to be a middle-aged woman. Later, I found out that she was the wife of a senior executive of Shanghai Entertainment. 2 years ago, I was pregnant, and I told him about it. Actually, I didn't want to be pregnant, but I kept asking him to use contraceptive measures, but he refused. He said that it was uncomfortable to wear condoms, and that it wouldn't be easy to get pregnant. I didn't understand, so I believed him. He asked me to have an abortion, and he acted like he was in pain. But, I accidentally checked the chat records, and he said that I was trying to kill him by getting pregnant. It was also at that time that I found out that he was having an affair with a lot of big shots in the entertainment industry. I didn't understand at that time. It wasn't until after we broke up that I found out that he was willing to accept the unspoken rules in order to become famous. His partner was the artistic director of Shanghai Entertainment. I met the director once, and he was a man in his 40s. I couldn't accept this fact. When we broke up, I chose to have an abortion. During the abortion, I suffered a massive hemorrhage. When I was taken out of the operating room, I was in a daze. I didn't even know that my uterus had been removed by the doctor. When I woke up, my mother was by my bedside, crying and apologizing to me. Because of the massive hemorrhage, in order to save my life, they had no choice but to remove my uterus. Since then, I couldn't have children. I permanently lost the right to be a mother. I hated him. For a long time after that, I fell into this pain. I was also troubled by depression for a long time. I didn't understand what was the meaning of living. I felt like my life was ruined by Tang Yu. And he successfully signed a contract with Shanghai Entertainment. Of course, he must have paid a big price for this. But, what did I do wrong? My mistake was that when I was in love, I was too stupid. I always indulged him, spoiled him. Whatever he wanted, I tried my best to get it for him. When I was running the online store, he almost didn't help me. He owned half of the store's shares. At that time, he invested tens of thousands as a deposit. Other than that, the rest of the investment was from me. Even so, I was still willing to share the shares with him. Perhaps love makes people blind. But what I'm most unhappy about is that he didn't hurt me at all. I saw the girl jumping off the building. That nightmarish memory came back to me again. I stood up, not to ask for an explanation, but to tear off the mask of this so-called quality idol. In fact, Tang Yu isn't the perfect person you think he is. In addition to accusing Tang Yu of crimes, the ex-girlfriend also released one piece of information after another. The equity book, the prospectus, the photo with Tang Yu, the pregnancy diagnosis, the report of the hemorrhage during the abortion, and the information about the depression. Everything was available. His chat with Tang Yu was also published. For a moment, Tang Yu's image changed beyond recognition. This incident had attracted the attention of almost everyone, and it was unprecedentedly popular. Not because Tang Yu was a scumbag, but because of his extremely bad character. It was clearly her own doing, but she actually pushed all the blame onto Hua Jin.